Well, I don't want to break up this friendly conversation everyone's having. Don't then? Well, but it is 7 or a little after, so we are on the verge of starting our business meeting here. First of all, I'd just like to say it is so wonderful to see all your beautiful faces here in the chambers this evening. I appreciate that very much. Nice to have a packed house. So I am calling to order then our business meeting for the Kalamazoo City Commission for March 6th, 2023. And our first order of business is to call the roll. Clerk Burling.
Commissioner Decker.
Present.
Commissioner Hess.
Present.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Present.
Commissioner Juarez.
Here.
Commissioner Pradel.
Present.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Present.
Mayor Anderson.
Here. Thank you, Clerk Burling. For our opening ceremony tonight, we are blessed to have Pastor Christopher Inglesma of the Covenant United Reformed Church here with us. And I'm going to ask him to come up here in a moment. Just a reminder, please stand for the invocation and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor.
Let's seek the face of God. Lord God Almighty, we come into your presence this evening to lift up, Lord, this meeting of the business commissioners of Kalamazoo. We pray, Lord, for wisdom. You have said in your word that if any man lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who giveth liberally and upbraideth not. And so we pray, Lord, that you would bless each commissioner with wisdom to discern your will in the decisions that have to be made. We lift up, Lord, our city of Kalamazoo. We love this city, Lord, and we earnestly pray that you would remember her in your mercy, that you would remember, Lord, the first responders, the police, and all those who labor to keep order in our community. Lord, will you bless them with safety? What a difficult task they have from day to day. And Lord, we pray in a special measure that you'd send your angel to be a guard of protection round about them. Lord, we pray for the teachers in the schools who operate on a daily basis, sacrificing, Lord, making a great sacrifice of their time and energies to train our youth. We pray, Lord, that you would remember them in your mercy and give them all that they need to do their work, and that they might find great pleasure in it. Lord, we pray for our city, Lord, especially for those who may be in distress this evening. Lord, we pray for the hurting. We pray for the downtrodden, Lord, those who feel as if you may have abandoned them. Lord, we pray that you would visit them this evening, that they would know your special presence and care, and that we, O Lord, as a city could provide a place for them, a safe place where they could flourish and prosper under your hand of blessing. And so we commit ourselves into your hands. Pray, Lord, that you would keep us and guard our loved ones and our families this evening, and that your name would receive the glory. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much to all of you that are still coming in here. I think there's seats for everyone. We have a couple proclamations to get started with this evening, and the first proclamation is going to be read by our commission liaison to our Environmental Concerns Committee, Commissioner Hess. It is for Climate Emergency Month, and I believe that Professor Alan Webb is here to accept that, so if you please come forward, and whoever else is coming up with you. I will bring the proclamation down, and Commissioner Hess will read it.
Thank you, Mayor. Alan, welcome to the commission meeting, and thank you for your work on behalf of the Western Michigan Climate Change Work Group. Thank you so much. Proclamation for the Climate Emergency Month of March 2023. Whereas, climate change is an existential threat to the quality of life on this planet, and after decades of warnings about the impacts of increasing greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and urgings to act to prevent these impacts, the world is experiencing them. Increased heat waves, massive flooding, catastrophic droughts, intense storms, rising seas, erratic weather patterns, changing precipitation, changing range of pests and pathogens are just examples of the direct impacts of the climate change the world is now dealing with. And whereas, with these changing patterns, plants and animals, including humans, find that living where and how they have lived for generations is more difficult. This is throwing off all life balance. Mass human migration is now underway and is projected to accelerate in the next decade, stressing infrastructure, increasing conflict, and jeopardizing the security of all. And whereas, in the fall of 2019, the city of Kalamazoo took the bold move to declare that the world is in a climate emergency that threatens our citizens, city, region, state, and the natural world. Crafting a city sustainability plan and hiring a sustainability coordinator are the first steps for acting to minimize the very worst possible outcomes. We have precious little time left to act. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, the world must emit 50% less greenhouse gases by the year 2030 and cease all emissions by the year 2050. These once might have seemed like years way in the future, but they are no longer are. And whereas there are some hopeful signs that progress is being made, the price of utility-scale solar, photovoltaic, or PV energy has decreased 90% in the last decade to the point where it is the cheapest option for new construction. According to the International Energy Agency, $1.4 trillion poured into clean energy projects in 2022. According to the Yale Project on Climate Communication, 72% of Americans believe global warming is happening, and 2/3 are worried about it. And whereas, drawing attention to the momentum evidenced by public acknowledgement of the crisis in government declarations, news stories, and increased calls around the world for action, in March, the WMU Climate Change Working Group is hosting a Climate Emergency Month, Creating a Just and Sustainable Future. It includes a month-long series of events and activities with the goal to draw attention to the climate crisis and raise awareness about the risks and consequences. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the City of Kalamazoo declares March as Climate Emergency Month and recognizes that by using collective action, we can coordinate and encourage local and regional communities to act with more urgency and foster a just transition to a sustainable future for all people. Signed, David F. Anderson, Mayor.
Mayor Anderson and members of the commission, some of you who are dear friends of mine from many years past. Chris Pradle was scout leader of the Boy Scout troop I was assistant leader of 20-some years ago, or something like that. He showed a lot of leadership as a young man, you're not surprised to hear.
Of course not.
Excuse me for picking on you, Chris. You knew that might be coming. But I'm here as a professor at Western, a member of the Climate Change Working Group, and I'm here with a student, Brendan Mortensen-Siguen. Brendan is a member of the leadership group of the student government at Western. Particularly his focus has been on sustainability and issues of climate change. So he's been working very hard with a lot of students over there, as I've been working with the faculty for the last 10 years. We're very appreciative of the city joining in on the Climate Emergency Month. We thank all of you for participating with that. This Climate Emergency Month is become now endorsed by the President's office at the university and many other offices across the campus and many different departments. It's also been endorsed and supported by the Kalamazoo Nature Center, the Kalamazoo Public Library, a number of churches in the community, and a whole series of events are happening this entire month. Everything from moving to vegan cooking to trying to think about whether or not failing, a professor of philosophy is giving a talk about whether or not failing to address the climate emergency constitutes mass murder. So I mean, we have quite an extreme range of different kinds of topics and issues that are being looked at. Climate justice is a very big part of the month. We're having speakers come from Great Britain, from California, and Representative Talib from the Detroit area is going to be speaking too. We have a whole series of activities, and as I mentioned, I'll be talking about teaching about climate change in the public schools. We'll be talking about, we'll have electric vehicle show on campus, and we'll have an expert on enforcing climate law and legislation is going to be speaking. Bill McKibben, who's a very well-known activist, spoke with us by Zoom to start the month off with a large group of students meeting with him online, as well as some of us in present. St. Thomas More Church and the People's Church are also hosting events. I want to draw particular attention to the City Council and to members of the city government to an event that will be happening on March 18th at the Kalamazoo Public Library in the Van Dusen Room. A woman named Missy Stoltz, I think you guys, many of you may know her. She's kind of the main climate coordinator, the Climate Sustainability Innovation Manager for the city of Ann Arbor. And I think Ann Arbor and Portland, Oregon are the two leading cities in the country and working to address climate change. I'm not going to say a lot more. I will say that, I mean, I think the proclamation says a lot of things very well and very clearly. Here in Kalamazoo, you know, in the short run, we're going to be better off than some other places, but we're also still and already experiencing some severe events. We had, of course, that terrible flooding in 2018. You maybe remember the viral videos of people on jet skis going down through the city, but it was a flooding that particularly impacted poor neighborhoods. We've certainly seen all these crazy storms that we're having, and the weather that does not seem to be stable in any kind of way. And one of the things I've said to my students at the university is that, you know, increasingly when the weather is being described, they're linking it to climate change. And that's a very appropriate, and probably sometimes 1 out of 3 events that could be linked to climate change, the paper will say something like, yes, that may have something to do with climate change. But what they're not saying is how the events that we're seeing today are not simply going to become more prevalent, but they're going to become far more severe as the climate continues to worsen. And events that we can't even yet truly imagine, but in the paleoclimatological history of the Earth, when the Earth warms several more degrees than it's warming now, which it's threatening to do, we'll have storms that will remove all the topsoil. We'll have storms of a severity that we cannot now imagine. And so what's coming is so terrifying that we have to act now to do exactly as the proclamation says, to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030. That's now 7 years away. That's some very serious work that needs to be done. I'm on a committee with the leadership of the university that was working very hard to figure out how we're going to change the way we heat our buildings, how the way we insulate, and the other activities that we do on our campus. So there's a lot we're doing at the university. I know you guys here at the city are working, and we're going to bring in a person to work with the whole county. So I think there's a lot of efforts going on here in Kalamazoo, and it's going to be important for all of us. So again, thank you very much. And Brendan, you want to just give a sentence here or two?
Sure. Thank you for the welcome. As it was said, I am a member of the student government at Western Michigan. I'm also an engaged student and part of the community there. I would really appreciate if the city could involve themselves in Climate Emergency Month to both collaborate with the students there, collaborate with the community even more. Climate issues are very anxiety-ridden amongst young people. People really care about the climate crisis, and I would hope city involvement helps collaborate between those groups.
Thank you once again for coming down here. So a little different vein, we have another proclamation this evening, and Commissioner Pradel is going to do us the honor of reading that. But just a few words before we have that proclamation. This is just a reminder of the difference it can make in a community when you have local entrepreneurs. We have a gentleman here in Kalamazoo who started making beer in his basement over on Winchell Street and selling it, and by the way, that was not legal, but for any of you that might be thinking about doing it now, but you know, that business in many ways, Bell's Beer, ended up being a huge employer, a good employer here in Kalamazoo, employing a great number of people with great jobs and really putting Kalamazoo on the map in that way. And even more so, now that there's been some transition there at Bell's, you'll see that some of the resources that have accrued to our community through having a product that has value and people are willing to pay for that are now showing up in a lot of places. For example, a very large donation that went to the Boys and Girls Club from Larry Bell and a variety of other things. So it's just that cycle of entrepreneurs in Kalamazoo, whether you're talking about Uptown Company way back in the day, where you're talking about Stryker, who's by creating value and providing jobs, end up being able to provide additional resources, stay here in Kalamazoo, stay committed to Kalamazoo in doing that. So just a profoundly important thing. I want to thank Larry and Bells for that. And we are recognizing a particular portion of the product line. So I will pass it over to you, Commissioner Pradel.
Sure. Proclamation recognizing the unofficial first day of spring in Kalamazoo. A proclamation for Oberon Day. And I believe we're joined here by Vice President Carrie Junker of Bells. And then on Oberon Day, you'll also see City Hall lit in Oberon colors on our facade. So whereas the release of Oberon is a unique Michigan celebration across the entire state, Michiganders have been celebrating the release of Oberon every spring since 1992, which supports our hospitality economy every spring when released. And whereas Oberon, an American wheat ale, is one of the most recognizable craft beers in Michigan and is recognized by beer drinkers all over the state as the first sign of summer, I should say. And whereas Oberon Ale is enjoyed at baseball games, near our fresh water, and at local establishments, and whereas Michigan is the 6th in the country for number of breweries, microbreweries, and brew pubs, and Oberon Ale was the first craft beer for many Michigan beer drinkers. And whereas in the past 5 years, Michiganders have enjoyed 123 million pints of Oberon, and whereas craft beer in Michigan has contributed nearly $1 billion and 10,000 jobs to our economy. And whereas Bell's Brewery, Michigan's oldest continuously operating craft brewery, has grown into one of the largest craft breweries in America and has reclaimed the spot of Michigan's largest brewery as of the end of 2022. And whereas Bell's inspired brewing philosophy represents our collective responsibility to create meaningful change by resourcing responsibly as stewards of our environment, by reigniting and celebrating our distinct sense of creativity, and by re-energizing the common belief that we can come together to make good on the promise of a more prosperous future for all. Now, therefore, I, Commissioner Chris Pradel, on behalf of the 54th City Commission and Mayor David F. Anderson of the City of Kalamazoo, do hereby proclaim March 20th, 2023 as Oberon Day to celebrate entrepreneurship, the coming of summer, and the great craft beer industry in the City of Kalamazoo and State of Michigan.
Commissioners, thank you. Community, my name is Carrie Junker. I am the Executive Vice President of Bell's Brewery, where I've had the privilege of working for 20 years this year. So please do know that as Larry transitions to retirement and doing more with his philanthropic work, that Bell's is in good hands with long-term folks here in Kalamazoo who care about Kalamazoo, their community members, and certainly Oberon Day is incredibly important for us, not just because we get to sip the first, sense of sunshine, but because we get to welcome our community into our pub, into our bar, into, frankly, the streets of Kalamazoo in order to both enjoy the wonderful work of the team at Bell's, but also to invite visitors from across Michigan and many other states to be able to enjoy Kalamazoo. It is our privilege to be able to show Kalamazoo off to our wonderful patrons, and we certainly thank the Commission and invite you all, along with our community, to please come have a pint with us on March 20th. Thank you.
I believe that would be after our next commission meeting.
So once again, thank you for taking the time coming down here and accepting this proclamation. We appreciate your work and your commitment to Kalamazoo, so thank you so much. We are now down to the point on the agenda for the adoption of the formal agenda. Commissioners, are there any items on G, the consent agenda, that you would like to see moved to the regular agenda? H. Seeing none, I assume I would have heard something. Is there anyone in the chambers here who would like to move any items from the consent agenda to the regular agenda? All right, seeing none, the agenda stands then. Communications, Manager Isma.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to call forward our Community Planning Economic Development Sustainable Development Coordinator, Jamie McCarthy, and Mr. Derek Knopf from Consumers Energy. They have a presentation on the Kalamazoo Energy Collaborative.
Welcome, Jamie McCarthy. Nice to have you here.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, and City Manager for giving us a little bit of your time this evening. I'm happy to give you an update on the accomplishments of the KEC in 2022, and really am excited to be able to recognize our outstanding partners who joined us in 2022 and really highlight them this evening. So I'll just start with a little bit of background. I don't think we've been in front of the Commission for a little while now. The Kalamazoo Energy Collaborative was initiated by Consumers Energy as our local gas and electric utility provider. And we're invited as the city to participate in a first-of-its-kind pilot program led by the utility. And the third and really important partner in this project and in this initiative are large commercial buildings across the city. And that's sort of that third piece of this program. And really who we want to point out and recognize tonight. The program is set up to allow Consumers Energy customers, those commercial buildings, special access to their utility data through a brand new online portal, a tool that they can use. So instead of just getting that monthly bill that gives you your lump sum of energy and the cost of that energy in that bill, the new online tool lets a building do a deep dive into their energy data. It shows the peaks and the valleys of when you're using that energy in your building. And when you have that knowledge, you then can start using it to ask questions and really improve the performance of your building, whether it's just making sure those lights are turned off at night because you're seeing some high usage, to tuning up some of your heating and cooling systems and all sorts of things that you can do with the equipment in your building to really help save energy and reduce waste. So that's kind of the key part of this program. And now we really just want to highlight these building owners, these organizations, these building operators. There's 35 buildings who joined the program last year. These are buildings that are all around 20,000 square feet or larger, so they're some of our biggest energy consumers in any community, but certainly in Kalamazoo. And so I'm not going to read them off, but I think, you know, a lot of folks are probably familiar with these places around town. And I just want to, again, say thank you to these buildings. They've stepped up, they've tried something new and different, and really committed to the shared goals of all the partners in this group. The program really launched halfway through 2022. Some of the buildings on that list actually helped us in 21 and early 22 test some of these tools, really make sure that they were user-friendly, and so we thank folks for helping us do that. In total, we were hoping in 22 to enroll over 30 buildings, and we met that goal. We had 35 buildings step forward this last year in the city and get enrolled. They're now making commitments into 2023 as a group. They have 122 different energy efficiency measures they're hoping to start chipping away at. And then one of the really nice things about the program is that customers, they're getting some free technical services, learning how to benchmark a building. They have a consultant who can come in and do a lot of the work to get the organization set up. And then they're getting access and information about other consumers' energy programs that they can enroll their buildings and try to get some of those deeper energy savings. I think we have a video to show you tonight because sometimes just hearing from the folks who are involved in this can give us the best story and the best picture. And I really want to call attention to Kalamazoo Loaves and Fishes, who signed on early. They have a building that I think we thought, isn't too old. It's maybe just over a decade old, and you think, new buildings are always high performing, but they were a great example of how there's always work to be done to investigate your building and make it even more energy efficient. So Clerk Borling, if you'll play the video.
I'm Greta Faworski. I'm the Associate Director for Kalamazoo Loaves and Fishes, and we are proud to be part of the Kalamazoo Energy Collaborative. We were approached to be involved, and it was really interesting because we had started to think about internally ways that we could be sustainable. We are a food pantry, however, we have a huge warehouse full of cold storage and a lot of moving pieces that we use a lot of different energy. It was a really easy process. We walked through our building with the city and Consumers Energy and looked at the different ways that we use energy. One of the big things was our refrigerant and our large cooler, and ways that we could make small changes, but then in the long run would have a huge impact. And a lot of the things that were identified were controls to make sure that there were different temperatures in our coolant at different times of the day, but then also defrost cycles. We implemented what we call an Arctic Fox, which controls when the defrost happens in the freezer and cooler. We also did little things in the office spaces, like install Ecobee thermostats. We worked to make sure that our computer stations were energy efficient. Simple things, but you don't think about it unless someone tells you to think about it. We also were in the process of replacing all of our lighting to be LED lighting. There was a written report that we could take to our board of directors to show them. These are things that were recommended. These are things we would like to do. We have to consider how our footprint will continue throughout the next 10, 20, 30 years. So we're really proud to be a part of it, and we encourage anybody else to consider it. We just felt it was a good thing to do for the community.
Okay, so just a little bit more about the wins of this program in '22. Internally at the city was able to, through this program, benchmark 4 of our largest buildings with the largest footprint, including the water reclamation plant, which we understand is going to be a big energy user. That type of building, that type of industrial processing uses a lot of energy, but there's also been some really great upgrades and work that's been done there. And this was one of our early action items in our sustainability plan. We understood if we could measure and benchmark and know what we're using in our buildings, then our next step can be, really improving that performance and optimizing those buildings, and that's stuff we're going to be working on into the future. And then just one more win, being able to participate and bring this program to Kalamazoo and some of the successes it's had. KEC and Consumers is committed to expanding the program in '23, so now commercial buildings throughout Kalamazoo County can enroll in the program. They can get signed up for that online portal and start getting a lot more detailed energy information on their buildings. And then in 2023, we're going to focus on those changes, those optimization, the performance of those buildings, since I hope to be back here next year celebrating and recognizing our building participants who've made significant energy reductions and savings over this year. I'm going to end leaving a contact information and a shameless plug that if there's any folks listening tonight who, your place of employment, a building you own, churches, any of these large commercial buildings are eligible. Again, it's expanding into Kalamazoo County, and so if you have questions, you want to learn more about it, I would really encourage you to reach out to Blake Laginus, who's the program coordinator. His information's up here, and he will have all of the details for you. And I'll just say thank you again to Commission, and really want to say thank you to all of those building owners and operators, and really looking forward to what we're going to accomplish together in 2023.
Thank you, Jamie McCarthy. I see Mr. Honofs is here. Is he going to make any comments, or at least introduce yourself?
Hi there, Derek Knopfs, handle local government community affairs for Consumers Energy here in Southwest Michigan. I just want to say thanks to the city for being willing to partner with us on this and be a champion of this. It really goes to, you know, what you were talking about earlier with climate change and your plan, your sustainability plan. I mean, we have a 20-year plan called our Clean Energy Plan at Consumers Energy. It involves phasing out our coal generation and adding a significant amount of renewable energy. And a big piece of that plan over the next 20 years is energy efficiency. To the extent that we can be more efficient, and we know there's old buildings everywhere that can be more efficient, we avoid building costly generation assets that cost everybody a lot of money. And then these folks who are participating save money every month on their bill. And they can see that in real time. And when you look at organizations like Loaves and Fishes, you know, that matters to the people that they serve. So again, just want to say thank you for partnering with us.
Thank you, Mr. Knopfs. Appreciate it. All set, Manager Ritzman, with that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
All right. So we have one other piece under communications, which I'm going to take here, and just reflect on something. This city is an organization with just dozens of departments, over 650 people that work here, and we remember back not so long ago where you'd go on our city website and you'd look for, you know, maybe dozens and dozens of contact phone numbers for how to get in touch with the department or leave some concern. And our previous mayor looked at what some other cities were doing and felt it was very important for us to try to get a consolidated, easy to remember number that would help people get in touch with the city. And so that is what we're talking about here. It's 311 Day, 311 Day, and we're celebrating that this month. I actually didn't realize there was such a thing, but I guess there is, and that's just a reminder that we have that number here in Kalamazoo. And I know it won't always be perfect calling that number, and sometimes you may not get the answer you want immediately, but in this building, way up in the Eagle's Nest on the 4th floor, there's a dedicated group of people who are continually trying to improve their expertise as it relates to all things city, and also be that friendly voice that will answer the phone, not some contract agency that's in another state, but folks right here in this building whose job it is to help as much as possible get you, when you call 311, either to leave the information you want to leave, let's say it's about a pothole or a limb down, or get you directed to a person that you need to talk to. So here, 311, it's multi-channel service. It connects citizens to government. That's the idea. And in addition, it is a consolidated way that we can collect information like what kind of concerns are we getting? How can we respond better? What are issues that we're getting a lot of calls about? So it provides us feedback as well. I guess Baltimore was the first city to bring 311 into the works. It was a police non-emergency number. It was in January of 1999. Chicago followed up. I don't know the year that we started here, Manager Rissma. I don't know if you know that off the top of your head.
Yep, it was right before COVID began, so in 2019.
2018, okay. And so we now have a 311 system here. So the focus is that no matter what it is, you know, people remember 911, but you can call 311 for those non-emergency calls, and it's there to be able to respond in a timely fashion, whether it's a concern that could save lives, to connect citizens to professionals that are in particular portion of our work here at the city. And in addition, it does help divert calls that might otherwise be emergency calls that should go to 911. We don't want to clog that number up. So what we're doing just by talking about it here is reminding all of us that that exists. We've got some fantastic employees. If anyone hasn't had a chance, go up to the fourth floor and walk through. When people are working up there, you'll see that dedicated crew that, for most of us, we will only hear their voice, but who are, doing that work. And that means sometimes they're at the complaint department also. And so anyone that has to be that person that answers the phone when sometimes people aren't happy, once again, I'll give that crew just a bunch of props. So it's now available in most major cities, moving to smaller towns across the country. But we're proud that we're in that category of cities that does have 311 service. So Jim, thanks for that continued work, and appreciate once again, say thanks when you call in to 311 before you let them know what your concern or problem is, because that's a human being answering the phone that is there to try to provide you the best help that they can. Question, Commissioner? Okay. Yeah. All right, thank you. All right, now we have reached the portion of our agenda for public comments. So we will start with public comments from anyone who's in the chambers here who's interested in making a public comment. You have 3 minutes. Please give us your name and whether you live in the city, and you can come up anytime you want. After all those who are in the chambers have made a public comment, there will be an opportunity for us to listen to public comments from people who call in. And Deputy City Manager Chamberlain will be managing that. That call-in number is 888-382-9556. Yes, please, come forward.
My name is Nehemiah Scudder. I've used to come out to the city commission more frequently, but I'm trying to do my part as a citizen of Kalamazoo. And I am proud to be here. I hope that this new commission for me will be active and answering the needs of its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Pastor Urban.
Hold it just a minute. My name is on the list next. On the internet, it says 4 minutes you have on citizen time. Does that change?
I'm not certain about where that's posted, but it is 3 minutes. Thank you.
4 minutes, and you only allow 3 now. So, but if you're going to change it, then you got to change it on the internet. You got to be, So, all right. My name's William Shields. I'm a business owner of the sign shop, 4302 Southwest Beach. I came here before, complained about the potholes and the expense of $900 of damage to my car, and you said that's too bad because the state allows us 30 days to fix the potholes. That's your problem. My daughter was assaulted, hit on the head by a person at her place of work. The Kalamazoo police station is less than a block away, yet it took them 5 hours to respond. And she had to go to the ER. They had busted her car windows, wrecked her car, damage to it. They never followed up on it. Case number 1901-2895. Why? Okay, robbery at the sign shop by Joseph Glenn Sloan. Took him to court. We won. Prosecuting attorney never followed up. And the robber and him both need to be held accountable. The robber's been in court at least 13 times. Case number B17-1791. I am angry, displeased, outraged, and pissed off and mad, and then to get ripped off by the city with a charge of $139.84 surcharge on my tax payment, which I paid on time, And it's outrageous because the going rate starts at 1.5%. That would only be $74. You're charging an additional $65.84. You're not allowed to make a profit on a payment for a credit card charge. Okay, that's double dipping because you're paying taxes on top of a tax. I am paying a lot of taxes and not getting any return. In the 3 years we had COVA, some days we didn't even make $139.84 in one day, yet you're charging me that just to process a payment. Business, I've been in business 34 years, and people don't do their work, you shouldn't pay them. Are they still working from home? Because they're not doing their job right. If this is how you're going to treat people in Kalamazoo, then I should put up this sign I made for you that says, going out of business after 34 years because the city charges $139.84 for processing or convenient fee, whatever you call it, to pay your taxes on time with a credit card. This double dipping tax to the taxpayers for service that sucks because you're not getting anything from it. And also,
Thank you, sir.
on this sign here, there's an example. We need to put up here above the credit cards. Notice we charge at 3%.
Sir, just so you know, the microphone is off, so people who are watching won't be able to hear you. I'm sorry for your concerns.
You need to be honest and transparent. Instead of sticking it on the back, it should be on the front of the page.
Thank you. There is someone from public safety in the room here. They might be able to catch up with you for some details. So, sir, your time is up.
Is that 4 minutes or 3?
3 minutes, sir. Yes. Next, please.
Good evening, City Commissioners and everyone else who is here. Very good seeing everyone. I'm Mrs. Lofton. I'm a resident of 1416 Woodward Avenue here in Kalamazoo. And I'm here to ask a question about a proposal. It appears to be number 3 on the agenda. I'm unsure if I'm correct. There's a number 3 here. It says approval of an allocation plan for city's home investment partnership. Does that have to do with financing? Does that have to do with financing training programs for the homeless at Stone Church? Is that relative to that or no?
Correct. That's
Okay.
regular agenda item 3.
All right, so I'm here just to ask a couple of questions in regard of number 3 on the agenda for tonight. I'm a resident asking that the commission allow there be a meeting with Northside residents about this particular effort because we live on the north side and we're unaware of this particular proposal and its details in regard to our safety and concerns about improving our neighborhood, looking forward to single-family homes being constructed there, and just making sure that our children are safe and can enjoy our resources on the north side. So I'm hoping that my voice in that effort, asking that there's a postponement of approval of this particular article, number 3, until there's a meeting with Northside, a formal meeting with Northside residents, whether it be here or at a neighborhood agency or something, that we are informed of what's happening in our neighborhood in this regard, how long is it proposed, and we just didn't know anything about this particular proposal, and we're unsure of any details, if it has an impact on our children or anything else. So I'm hoping that my request is respected in that regard, that there's some sort of meeting to ask that this number 3 is postponed until there's a meeting with us.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
we would rather you bring it up. We understand that there's the people here, but the people that, the residents that came, they don't understand that you're gonna bring it up on number 3, and anyone who wants to speak, the residents that are here, they can speak for themselves, that it's on number 3. So I'm gonna reserve my time to speak on number 3 when it gets to number 3. Thank you.
Right. Yes, just for some clarity here, it is on the regular agenda as well. You can certainly use an opportunity now to speak to it if you would like, or you can wait till it comes up on the regular agenda and speak at that time as well. Next, please.
Because I'm not going to talk. Y'all going to talk about it. I just want to say, Ricky Thrash.
Ricky, push your microphone up. There you go.
Okay,
Thank you.
Ricky Thrash, Northside resident. My concern is the roundabout. Harrison, Gull Road, Ransom, all the traffic that travels west on Gull Road, they come down Gull Road, heading west off of Gull Road. I don't know if we can do anything to make those people yield or not, whether it's a flashing yield sign or not. But there's been a couple of accidents because the people that travel west on Gull Road go 30, 35, 40 miles an hour and do not even think about yielding. So that makes everybody else in the roundabout have to wait for them to just come. And I only stood up here because I almost got hit, because I had the nerve to yield and try to go. That's all I want to say. I don't know if anything can be done, but I want you guys to be aware, and hopefully something can be done about that.
Thank you, Mr. Thrash. I appreciate it. Next, please.
Armstrong, Associate Pastor of Stones Church, former Executive Director of New Genesis Incorporated. Both facilities are located on the north side of Kalamazoo. I want to address, I'm responsible now for 2 major projects that Stones Church would like to do in conjunction with New Genesis for north side Kalamazoo. One is the project with the Gospel Mission. And it's a work training, skill development program that will be held at the Gospel Mission to train our people who are homelessness for jobs that are available to them right now. And that's a program that's going to be held over the course of the year if funding is approved by that. We met with the Gospel Mission, we met with city officials about that, and that's project number 1. Project number 2 is the Cobb Street building at 1340 Cobb Street that Stones Church has owned for 20 years. That we have met with city officials. Our goal there is to provide high quality, high efficient home ownership, 2 to 4 bedroom homes to serve the neighborhood of the North Side. We are inviting you and North Side residents that we make them aware of this to a meeting at Stones Church on Tuesday, March 14th at 7 p.m. to learn more, for anyone to ask questions, to make recommendations, to offer input before we get going. And that's what we're doing now. We've been sending out letters to those residents who live in the Cobb Street, Bosker neighborhood to make sure they get more information, as well as send out more information out. Our only desire now is to provide more jobs and better housing coming to the north side of Kalamazoo. And that's what I wish to share today. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Armstrong. Yes, Director Mitchell. He's on now.
I'm on now?
Yeah.
Antonio Mitchell, Director for Community Planning and Economic Development. Wanted to back up Pastor Armstrong because there was confusion in the community that the 2 projects that he brought up are somewhat connected. They are not. The number 3 item on the regular agenda is the training program. And that is the program that pretty much the city is working to assist with funding to open up opportunity for more job
opportunities for individuals that are having trouble finding jobs, working through their training program at New Genesis. And the New Genesis site, which is Cobb Street, the old New Genesis site, is where we're working with them to do their research right now to develop, like I say, home ownership with demolition of the old school New Genesis site to redevelop that whole block, that almost 3 acres there on that subdivision there, to hopefully create a cul-de-sac in that development. This is an effort by Community Plan Economic Development to work with a number of our churches for developing their properties here in the city, in particular on the north side. As you know, we've been working with Mount Zion for their development project. We're working with Stone Church for their development project and helping them research this location and other locations. And then we're also working with Galilee Baptist Church as well, our 3 big churches that have a significant amount of property. And we're focusing on, hopefully, home development and job opportunities. And that's the focus. So as the projects go, we'll be reaching out to the community so they can get a presentation similar to what we did with Mount Zion, for the public to come in, give feedback, and give information. And that's what Stone Church is going to be doing as well. Sorry for the community to get the misunderstanding that these projects go together, but they do not. And we will be working with Stone Church to give more of a public input on what's going on with their project, and working with Galilee when their project grows up and moves forward. We'll be working with them to work with the community as well. So.
Thank you, Director Mixel. Just a reminder for everyone, we were in Kalamazoo lucky enough to get a tax credit award for the project that Mount Zion is involved in, which is a multi-housing project that they're doing for seniors on some property that was owned by Mount Zion.
Correct.
So there's an example of the kind of work that can happen here in Kalamazoo. But just to be very clear, item number 3 has no funding for housing or that building. This is very specifically talking about some funding for this training program.
Correct.
To help people become certified to be able to work in daycare facilities. Is that correct?
That is correct. All right. So thank you.
Next, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I stand before you as the president of the Metropolitan Kalamazoo branch of the NAACP. City Manager Ritzma, in your letter to me dated January 17, 2023, regarding the outcome of your investigation involving former Chief Coakley and the firm that conducted the investigation, you stated, and I quote, "In Compliance is a diverse firm that specializes in investigations regarding sexual misconduct and discriminatory harassment in work environments. Its consultants have decades of experience in matters involving civil rights investigations." End of quote. This is their overall description of their firm, and I quote, "Knowledgeable, trusted, effective. In Compliance consultants have decades of experience within the education environment, navigating the issues that are critical to today's schools, colleges, and universities. Because all of our consultants are attorneys, we combine legal knowledge with a deep understanding of education operations, offering practical advice and effective solutions to complex compliance issues. We have become trusted advisors to satisfied clients across the country." End of quote. In my research of In Compliance, when they were hired by the city, their staff was comprised of 14 white women, 6 white men, 1 black woman, and 1 black man. They now have 14 white women, 5 white men, 2 black women, and 1 black man. Nowhere in their own description do they mention being experts in diversity, equity, civil rights, sexual harassment, etc. While they have a couple of attorneys on staff that has experience in some of these areas, they don't describe themselves as experts in the above-mentioned fields. How was this organization selected? At the onset of this investigation, I voiced concerns as to whether this investigation would be conducted objectively using an anti-racist lens, given the city's history of systemic racism via practices and policies verified through the DEI assessments of the city. My concerns bears itself out. All three complainants were white females, and in compliance, a predominantly white female-led organization was hired to conduct the investigation. Again, I ask, what was the selection process for hiring this organization? In the investigative report submitted by In Compliance, one of the complainants alleged that an incident happened in 2018, which wasn't reported until last year, 2022. In 2018, the Kalamazoo City Chief of Police was a white female, as was the city's Human Resource Director. The white female complainant didn't file a complaint then, but did last year, 4 years later, after the alleged incident. Was the city aware? What you failed
Thank you, President Fields. Yes, next, please.
Hi, my name is Sarah Taylor. I am a resident of the city of Kalamazoo. I'm going to continue reading where Ms. Wendy left off. What you fail to see and understand is the issue regarding former Chief Coakley is a system of the systematic racism embedded in the Kalamazoo city government. Historically, what happened to him, black, has never happened to a white male chief, despite the fact there has been numerous complaints made against the white chiefs over the past decades. Racism is alive and well in the Kalamazoo city government, and it must be dismantled starting at the top and within the structures of knowing policies. In the words of the former DEI Director Darla Boiler regarding the results of the city's DEI assessments, and I quote, "People don't understand diversity, equity, inclusion. They do not get it. There's lack of diversity. We're primarily a white organization, primarily led by white men. Rest assured, regardless of race, creed, gender, socioeconomic status, the Kalamazoo Metropolitan Branch of the NAACP will continue to fight for equity and justice for all of Kalamazoo, and sometimes this means a change in leadership." Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Next, please.
Good evening. My name is Meg Adams, and I do reside in the city, and I'm a member of Isaac's Anti-Racism Task Force. It's been a while since I've been here, so when I prepared my words, I watched as I thought carefully about what I might say, just commenting on where is the city on its journey to becoming an anti-racist organization. Because most of you in front of me are white, like me, and even though we can articulate that we have advantages and privileges afforded to us for being white, we often still struggle seeing ourselves outside our whiteness. We know that whiteness is a construct. The question for us is, do we understand how whiteness is created? Why? Do we understand the influence of whitenesses and its impact on us? How it's shaped our beliefs, values, and relationships, especially with our BIPOC community? Are we able to even interrogate those aspects of whiteness to make fair and equitable decisions? This is a never-ending learning curve for me, often best addressed by ongoing training and education. January of 2021, Manager Ritzman made a comment about the city's role in racism and that the city planned to look at those truths as a part of your journey to become an anti-racist organization. He said it's unfortunately deeply rooted in our institution. The commitment begins with understanding and acknowledging the truth of our past and the role the city has played in creating and sustaining systemic racism. He was called on these statements after it was reported he actually fired the chief at that time, but told everyone she was retired. This brought to question accountability and what is the truth from the past on this journey. This is why I and others in the community questioned the investigational process and the allegations of our former, but now retired police chief. What is the city's truth from the past as it relates to the last two chiefs and how they were treated? Was the process used able to analyze the racial dynamics for a fair and impartial investigation? I mean, if we're going to be an anti-racist organization, especially when we have a BIPOC leader, it's imperative we understand the racial dynamics that form in response to racial oppression and racial superiority in the attitudes and behaviors of people in our institutional settings. This is what is deeply rooted in our institutions. And for us who are white, it means we need to understand how our racial superiority and our relationship to whiteness functions collectively and often unchecked maintains a racial paradigm and, as Manager Ritzman stated, sustains systemic racism. And I know here in the city, you are continuing this journey, and please know that Isaac is here to help support each of you and encourage each of you to continue your education and training, and hopefully we will be offering a race opportunity for you to work with the race this summer to understand what are the racial dynamics here in the city. What is our history of whiteness here in our city? What's the common language we need to use here in the city? What is the truth of the city's past as it relates to creating and maintaining systemic racism? Once the city understands where they are on the continuum on becoming an anti-racist organization, then the city can truly explore approaches to dismantle racism, that truly provide a foundation for long-lasting solutions that truly lead to racial and social justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Faison. I work with Isaac. I live in Township, but my work is predominantly within the city. We show up to these commission meetings to give public statements to address issues and lift up concerns within our BIPOC communities that we face daily to systemic racism. It's difficult to go through life dealing with systemic racism. Now add blatant racism on top of that. I previously spoke with you pertaining to the racism and assault that my son Terrell Lipsey encountered in Portage while delivering packages for FedEx. This incident took place on August 27th of last year, and we still have yet to see any progress. This same systemic racism we are facing in the township is present too in the city and in all institutions. It's unfortunate that we continue to be stagnated, and we have to dig and push to see any movement towards change. We come to these meetings to make a difference, to see change, and we pray that our voices are heard. Unfortunately, we are not always heard, and our voices do fall on deaf ears because of white supremacy culture. One of the major adversities we face while lifting our voices is fear of open conflict, which is described by Tima Oken in her article, White Supremacy Culture, as people in power are scared of express conflict and try to ignore it or run from it. When someone raises an issue that causes discomfort, this response is to blame the person for raising the issue rather than to look at the issue, which is actually causing the problem. Emphasis on being polite, equating that raising of difficult issues with being impolite, rude, or out of line. In Isaac, we seek to center TRHT touchstones in our work. So when we are up here speaking and things become difficult and you find yourself disagreeing or becoming judgmental, I encourage you to try turning to wonder. I wonder what she is thinking. I wonder what brought him to this place. I wonder what they are feeling right now. I wonder what my reaction teaches me about myself. When difficult issues are raised, they may also cause tension, but please understand, tension isn't always a bad thing because we don't have an easy road ahead of us, and we all need to feel uncomfortable to make needed significant changes. You are our elected officials, and we expect to see working with us or for us to become the beloved community. I've noticed that y'all have been lifting this up as well. You have talked the talk, now it's time to walk the walk. In Isaac, we believe in balancing touchstones. Speak your truth while listening deeply. Thank you all for your time, and I pray you were listening deep.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Good evening and happy Women's History Month to our mayor, to our vice mayor, commissioners, city manager, and staff. My name is Charlay Davis. I am the executive director of Isaac, and I do live in Kalamazoo. As we move further into this new year, we know that we have much more to do together. Dr. King said that the beloved community is not devoid of conflict, but it is free of violence. We must be able to learn to be able to lean into conflict at times for the love of each other and the love of our community. I wish I could say that this work was easy, but it is not always. It does not always feel good, and we don't always see eye to eye. And you may be labeled as difficult or the problem when you focus on systemic issues, but oh my goodness, the impact that we can have for those who come after us if we can simply dismantle systemic racism and isms. We are also happy to reach out to you all via email this month as a follow-up to our Isaac public meeting. A race will hold on July 19th through the 21st, an analysis workshop for Isaac, and again on August 16th through the 18th, a regional analysis workshop open to anybody in Michigan. In connection with the specific ask, Erase will be holding an IRO and IRS workshops around the fall of this year. Dates to be announced. Internalized racial oppression and internalized racial superiority explores the identity-shaping power of race and racism here in the lives of BIPOC people of color and white people in the United States. We are all impacted, and at times we don't even know it. This is the new work Isaac has been working with Erase for our organization starting in 2019. Lastly, thank you to City Manager for your follow-up letter connected to the investigation of Chief Coakley. I never want to question someone's narrative. Instead, I want us to stay focused on the systems. This is a systems issue. Systemic racism is ingrained in the culture of all of our institutions. City commissioners, even as the investigation is completed, community members continue to speak during public comments about systemic racism within the city. When thinking about systemic racism and policies and practices, we are still unclear as to how the majority of a white consulting firm whose focus is in higher education, not government, and who makes no mention of cultural competency or DEI being at the center of the practices and policies can achieve equitable outcomes or findings. These are questions that we need to ask and lean into before decisions are made. We need to ask this of our city manager and ask this of yourselves and ask this of each other. Moving in this way without anti-racism and an equity lens will continue to cause harm for those in the system. Our work continues together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Next, please.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Commissioners. My name is William Rowland, Kalamazoo resident. The last time I stood here and I referenced during the time when the issues were with Chief Coakley about some reports that had happened that had been commissioned through the city of Kalamazoo, but ignored over the years. I think I named the Troy Coleman report, I named the Karras report, and more recently that was one that was commissioned through the city of Kalamazoo that I've had the chance to read. But there was another one that was produced through the NAACP, very credible, by individuals that I think that most of us would say were credible. At that time, our Judge Alexander Lipsey was the president of the NAACP. Our former mayor, Robert B. Jones, was the first vice president, and Dr. J. Lewis Felton, second vice president, and I think most of the people in this room would say that they had some credibility. The attorneys that worked with them for legal redress also. One of the things I noted in the report from the NAACP was they recommended at the time, this report, if you look for it, was commissioned and dated September 22nd of '97, and it's called the NAACP report. But they recommended the city of Kalamazoo hire a director of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that position not be a normal report. They did not report to the HR director. They did not report to the city manager. They did report it to the city commission, because it seems like so many of these reports, even as I named them last time around, most of you, if any of you, had never heard of them. That was the comments after the meeting, that hadn't even heard it existed. What happens when reports are done, when you and the rest of you, when you change roles, those reports are still there. There was something that should have been done with them. Your replacements, your predecessors, don't pick it up. Our HR department or someone fails to let you know that they're out there. So here we are again, we're still commissioning reports. We're stacking them on shelves. They're collecting dust, and nobody works from the tool that you commissioned, that you approved. They are expensive. They cost a lot of money. People give reports and they sit there and it never happens, and every decade we go through this revolving door again. I think if we would do those things to be sure that somebody's getting that information, how do we pass along that information as we leave offices so that other people know what you're working on? As I said before, you may leave the office to the community, but the citizens in the community, we're still here. We're still looking for the outcomes that you have committed to do. This is what we're talking about, I think, the previous two speakers. We're looking for the outcomes that make sense to us, not just cost dollars and cents, but makes sense. And I pray that you would think about these things as we go through this, and that somebody would be responsible for ensuring that it doesn't fall through the cracks and that these things happen and bring them to fruition, okay? Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ashante Collins. I am the Anti-Racism Task Force lead at Isaac and also a co-chair for the Campaign for Criminal Justice and Transparency. On Sunday, January 15, 2023, the Northside Ministerial Alliance welcomed us into Mount Zion Baptist Church. The celebration was for Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and the theme was a community living in truth and righteousness, visualizing and executing the dream of the city of Kalamazoo. Took out an ad in the sponsorship book, and it read, "Diversity, equity, and inclusion are more than a dream. The foundation on which we will build a community where everyone belongs. The city of Kalamazoo is committed to transformational change with credible action." This year, the city of Kalamazoo will invest millions of dollars to support local businesses, build affordable housing, revitalize neighborhoods, improve infrastructure, empower residents, and inspire youth. Together, let's remember that word. Together, we can achieve our community's goals and realize Dr. King's vision of the beloved community. This statement was eloquently written from the city of Kalamazoo staff, and I just want to say thank you for that. I hope that we are able to live up to those words in this book. And I say we because, like you said, together we can achieve our community's goals and realize Dr. King's vision of the beloved community. We can do this between continued collaboration with grassroots organizations who have made it their fight, mission, and a priority to uphold and further Dr. King's vision. We can do that by the continued transparency in areas that have already began to happen, while other areas are prayerfully coming with transparency. As you sit here tonight and listen to everyone's concerns, don't just dismiss them and move on with your agenda because that's what you have to do. Actually take time to think about the things individuals are saying, because the things that they are dealing with and living with are important to them. Think if you were in their skin, in their homes, in their communities, and in their position, and see if you would have the same concerns and issue with how things have been going. The core value of the quest for Dr. King's beloved community was agape love. He said that agape does not begin with discriminating between worthy and unworthy people. It begins by loving others for the sake and makes no distinction between a friend and enemy. It is directed towards both. Agape is love seeking to preserve and create community. Preserving community is respecting the community that is already in these neighborhoods and including them in the plans that affect them. Creating community in Kalamazoo can only happen by inclusivity, and that means for all, not just some, the majority. Your words about diversity and equity and inclusion in the statement is one I hope that the city of Kalamazoo and its officials will strive to see through in this particular.
Thank you.
I don't know how I'm going to follow up after that. That was great. My name's Bobby Hopewell. I'm just kidding. He told me to say that a long time ago. My name's Ben Stanley. My number is 269-501-1818 if you ever want to talk. I'm bored a lot. I live at 1008 West North Street, Kalamazoo, Michigan. Please don't smash my windows. I've been doing some community gardening at the Douglas Community Center and Interfaith Homes and the Vine neighborhood this past year. And I've met some kids, especially at the Douglas and Interfaith Homes, that are pretty angry at the world. You know, if you don't let them plant the plant they want to plant, they might threaten to kill you. And they're like 7. They don't really understand what they're saying. They're just really mad. They're really angry, and they don't know how to express their emotions appropriately. They don't know how to deal with all that hurt and pain that they have. And it's all across the city. It's not just those neighborhoods. And I think it's a really good thing that's been going on. And we started doing it this year. We planted some plants, and we started ripping up some of the old plants, and we've run into people that don't want us there. We don't have a contract. We don't have official permission, and so they would appreciate it if we went through the proper channels. And I've tried going through the proper channels, and, well, you know I've tried, and it has not worked. So it's kind of sad to see that energy, a good positive thing, left to just fall apart because of what I don't really know. And then also, the Parks Board is meeting tomorrow, and our commissioner liaison has yet to show up. And so I don't know if we're going to get a new one or if they're going to be encouraged to actually show up. But that would be helpful because some of the things that we want to talk about, we don't really know without communicating with the, I don't think you want us to come up here individually at each city commission meeting to ask the questions. And otherwise it's a bunch of FOIA paperwork and it's just not fun. So thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the chambers who would like to make a comment during public comment? Seeing no one at this time, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, has anybody called in with a public comment?
We'll go ahead and check, open lines. We have no calls.
Thank you, DCM Chamberlain. Appreciate that. I just want to thank everyone that took the time, made the effort to come down and provide us with comments during our public comment portion of the meeting. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda. Manager Isma.
The following items are presented for approval, except items 10 and 11 are being postponed until March 20th. First is the approval of a contract extension with Earthworks Lawn and Landscape for 2023 property maintenance services in the amount of $152,570. Next is the approval of a one-year contract extension with Kronos Workforce Readiness to continue with the Human Resources Information System in the amount of $191,400. Next is the approval of a contract supplemental and change order with Allied Mechanical Services Incorporated for the Water Station Number 11 Filter Upgrades Project in the amount of $218,759.63. Next is the approval of a contract with A1 Asphalt Incorporated for the patching of West Michigan Avenue in the amount of $246,450. Next is the approval of a contract with Pavement Maintenance Systems, LLC, for preventative maintenance on Michigan Avenue in the amount of $335,806.95. Next is the approval of the purchase of a Prodigy hydro excavator from Jack Doheny Company through the Sourcewell Cooperative Contract in the amount of $430,250. Next is the approval of a professional services agreement with Abba March Consultants Incorporated for construction administrative services to the Ransom Street Utility Upgrade and Right-of-Way Improvements Project in the amount of $849,910. Next, the approval of the use of $12,000 from the City Commission Initiatives budget to support the annual Shop with a Senior program within the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety. Next is the approval of the following appointments and reappointments to the Zoning Board of Appeals. The reappointment of Jeremy Turpinning to a term expiring on March 31, 2026. The appointment of Gary Wark to for a term expiring on March 31, 2026. The appointment of Joseph Holler III for a term expiring on March 31, 2024. And the appointment of Tony McReynolds as an alternate member for a term expiring on March 31, 2025. Next is the approval of an agreement for the sale of 60 West Crosstown Parkway to Crosstown Ventures LLC for the sale price of $1,000. And finally, approval of a quick claim deed for 1418 Hilbert Street. And those are the requested actions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Manager Rispa. So Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to approve items 1 through 9, postpone 10 and 11 until March 20th, 2023, and authorize the city manager to sign all related documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Cooney,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Hess. Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner Juarez.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Decker.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The items on the consent agenda are approved. We are now down to H, the regular agenda for our first item. Manager Ritzma.
Item H1 is approval of the lease of 44 vehicles from Enterprise Fleet Management for a total of $1,857,062.95 over 60 months.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Is there any staff report on this item?
No, Your Honor, we do have staff available if there are any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions from the commission?
Yeah. Yeah, one of my questions, City Manager, is any of that enterprise fleet going to be electric vehicles? And, you know, I think I've had my answer, but I would like it to be answered for the community.
Sure. We have our Public Services Director, James Baker.
Mayor, City Commissioners, I heard the question Commissioner has, so I just want to reiterate it. Of the action that's in front of you tonight, approximately 44 vehicles. Are any of those electric vehicles? The answer to that is no, not at this time. So, yeah, because why is that? So that's a great question. One of the items that we're working on would be first to bring in electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We have to have a place to be able to charge those vehicles. That's something that we do have a work group that's committed to. We've got a team that includes public services staff, community planning, economic development staff, as well as some leaders from other local communities. We meet every other Thursday and we talk through some of the programs and plans to start to develop some electric vehicle charging. So that's kind of the first step, and there is a lot of planning that's going into this. You know, it's not just as simple as, you know, dropping a few extension cords out into the parking lot. There's, you know, certainly load on the grid that has to be considered. Right now, our major footprint for vehicles is the Stockbridge facility. The Stockbridge facility is located within a floodplain, and it's not uncommon for the Stockbridge facility to get several feet of water during a catastrophic flood event. That's not something we necessarily want to run a bunch of new electric vehicle chargers into. So there's more to it than that. I'm just getting some of the highlights of some of the challenges we're working through. Another aspect is scalability. It would be one thing for us to bring in 10 to 15 charging stations, which we may do here in the relatively near future. But how do we scale that up? How do we get to a space where we've got 200 or so charging locations? So we do have a pretty sizable fleet. We've got 600 and over 650 city employees. Some of those folks do drive and have to drive for their work that they do. Some of these folks are also 24-hour response, not just public safety, but also in the other departments. We operate and maintain a county-wide drinking water system and wastewater system, and if something goes wrong in the middle of the night, we have got to be there. So how do we work that out? So there's a lot of things we're working through to try to get to those answers, but we are working on it.
I appreciate that, and I know you're working on it, and I just wanted to hear it from your mouth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bradel?
Yeah, evening, Director Baker. I was just wondering, what does your fleet size look like currently for public services? So like what you know, percentage of this, of the overall fleet, just rough? I don't need exact numbers, but.
So we're about 200 total vehicles of the light duty class. So that would be kind of the white vehicles that are cars, trucks, sedans, vans, pickup trucks, that sort of thing. And that starts to wedge into some of the heavier class. If we look at the heavy duty class vehicles, we're up over 450 vehicles. And that does not include patrol vehicles, does not include public safety, you know, and those things. But those numbers do include our other departments. It's not just public services.
Sure, thanks.
Other questions for city team at this time? So now, just a follow-up question on that. Any hybrid options available where you wouldn't need a charging station that you're aware of?
So we've had a few of those vehicles over the years. Some of the, we did have a number of hybrid vehicles, both in CPED and in public services. Those have since cycled through, I believe. So, you know, at this point, some of the hybrid options they are available. We've shied away from them due to cost and maintenance. There are some more challenges, I would say, with maintenance and things of that nature.
Thank you, Director Baker. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is an opportunity for anyone who's in the audience to make any comments on this item. Is there anyone who's interested in speaking to this item? All right, seeing no one, the Commissioners, the recommended action is a motion to approve the vehicle lease. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Cooney,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Decker. Any discussion, Commissioners? Commissioner Pradel.
Sure. I was just going to thank the city staff for removing this to the regular agenda. I tend to appreciate anything that's over like $1 million to be on the regular agenda, just because the last meeting we had a $12 million item on the consent agenda. I just think anything that's that expensive, it's worthy to have an opportunity to explain it to the public and give the public an opportunity to better understand how we're spending our local tax dollars. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Commissioner Pradel, any other discussion? Obviously, we have a large number of vehicles, and this represents a portion of those vehicles, but I do hope that consistent with our intentions here related to the climate, that that is going to become a critical part of these kinds of leasing arrangements as we go forward. So I'll be interested to hear what your thoughts are on that, Manager Isma. See no more discussion, Clerk Borley, please call the roll.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner Juarez.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Decker.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The item is approved. Next is item H2, City Manager Isma.
Adoption of substantial amendments to the 2019 to 2023 Consolidated Plan and 2019 Action Plan as required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Thank you, Manager Isma. Is there a staff person who's going to provide a presentation on this?
Nope, but we have someone available if there are any
Okay.
questions.
Questions from the Commission on this? All right, seeing none at this point then, this is an opportunity for anybody who's here in the chambers to comment on this item. Is there anybody who would like to comment? Seeing no one, Commissioners, the recommended action is a motion to adopt the substantial amendments to the 2019 through 2023 Consolidated Plan and 2019 Action Plan as required by HUD. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Hoffman,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Hess. Discussion, Commissioners? Seeing none, Clerk Borland, please call the roll.
Commissioner Juarez.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
I'm abstaining because of my employer is an entity mentioned within the updated consolidated plan.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Decker.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The item is approved. Next on the regular agenda is item H3, City Manager Isma.
Approval of an allocation plan for the city's Home Investment Partnership Program, American Rescue Plan funds, including the budget recommended by the Community Development Act Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Manager Isma. Is there a report on this?
We do have staff available if there are any questions.
Maybe since this is a little
Yeah.
unusual thing, this is obviously American Rescue Plans. This is one-time dollars are being allocated, and it is home dollars, which we're used to, allocating home dollars. So if you just want to help us with a little introduction of that, it'd be worthwhile.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Manager, Commissioners. I'm Sherilyn Parsons, Housing Development Supervisor, and I have brought up with me Mackenzie Rosenberg-Schultz, who is the compliance specialist of these dollars. As the mayor mentioned, these are home ARP dollars. This is a one-time special allocation. They do not operate in the same manner that we are used to with home dollars. These dollars were specific for emphasis on those who are experiencing a risk of homelessness or homeless. They were assigned to be able to be used for affordable housing or supportive services. And we did have the public participation. We put out a notice of funding for availability, and through the process that we work with CDAC, Community Development Advisory Committee, this is the recommendation that came forward today. I'm going to ask Mackenzie to come up to break down the budget and explain the programming and the potential subrecipients that are brought before you today.
Thank you. Ms. Parsons.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you. So as Sherilyn mentioned, this is a special allocation of home investment partnership funds through the American Rescue Plan. The allowable uses are supportive services, tenant-based rental assistance, or affordable housing. The qualifying populations for these funds are homeless or at risk of homeless, fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking, other families requiring services or housing assistance to prevent homelessness, and those at greatest risk of housing instability. So these funds did go through our competitive NOFA process in November of 2022, and as a result of the NOFA process, it's the recommendation of CDAC that New Genesis Inc. is awarded $588,730 for an employment assistance and job training program that will benefit 40 individuals over the course of 4 years, and that training program will be held at the Kalamazoo Gospel Mission. It is also recommended by CDAC that Integrated Services of Kalamazoo be awarded $342,000 for tenant-based rental assistance and $668,671 for supportive services, including employment assistance and job training, housing search and counseling services, life skills training, mental health services, outreach services, transportation, case management, and utility assistance for 120 individuals over the course of 3 years. The remainder of the allocation will be set aside for City of Kalamazoo administration funds.
Thank you very much. Other questions from commissioners? Seeing no question, yes, Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you so much. I don't know if I have a question so much, but I know there is another, our local HARA. I'm wondering why weren't they invited, or why didn't they apply for any of this funding, specifically because that's what they do. And so I'm very shocked that that organization is not included when we know that they've already run out of funds through February for the rest of the year. So can you speak to that, Sherilyn, at all?
Actually, not directly, because yeah, we did run the potential subrecipient trainings for anyone who was interested in applying. We had a good response for people who showed up to that training. And then there were applications we did not receive that we thought we would.
Is there any wiggle room, given that our unhoused population is suffering so bad? Like, is there anything that can be done at this point to remediate that? Or is this just a one-shot deal and that's done?
So this funding is a one-shot deal. And in this funding came in response to the pandemic, as did our CDBG COVID dollars. We did have an unprecedented HUD edict come through in November. We've never had HUD do this before, but HUD did indicate that if there was not a plan presented to them, by the end of March, that there would be a full recapture of these dollars. So it is a very tight timeline that we've been working within. When the announcement came in November from HUD, we had already started our notice of funding availability, so we were already within our process to meet their requirements. But some sort of plan does need to go before HUD.
Thank you.
Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Parsons. Kind of piggybacking on what Commissioner Hoffman said, I just want to make sure I have the correct information. So we received the funds in 2021, correct?
The notice of award, yes.
Notice of award. What is the normal time frame for these NOFAs to go out to the communities and to organizations? Is it normally almost a year later, or were there some kind of circumstances that happened? And with the circumstances that may or may not have happened, if this is, an important thing, and that we have to have funds done by a certain date and allocated, if you can talk to the steps that were put into place to make sure that we were giving everyone a fair chance to really speak and interview with your department and to talk about how they would be able to use these funds. Because from hearing what Ms. McKenzie said, these funds were specifically for development of support housing, TBRA, which is the Tenant-Based Rental Assistance Program, provision of supported services, and acquisition and development of non-congregate shelter units. So I believe we probably just picked, with the organizations that we're helping right now, which is the two, I'm just kind of looking for some clarification on that, and is that the normal procedure where we get funds from the state and we sit on them for a year, or is there some kind of underlying circumstances that we here as a commission just don't know about?
Okay, so I heard a lot of questions, so if I don't answer them all, then just remind me. So, normal process. One thing asked was, what is the normal process with our federal funds? As mentioned, this was a special allocation. The normal process with our funds is that HUD runs on an annual basis. So typically the HUD program years are July to June. It's a 12-month. So normally the process happens within that 12-month process. These funds came through as different than any funds that the city has received, as they were as a result from the pandemic and rescue funds that came down. So there was some time to actually go through all of the HUD trainings to learn what could and could not be done, and then all of the mandates above and beyond, typical home mandates that go into these dollars. Also, one of the delays that the city experienced was when this was announced, it was at a time of staff turnover. So unfortunately, there was one brand new staff on board, that would be me, and I was trying to close out existing federal funds that were in need of being addressed immediately. So we brought on McKenzie in May. She joined us in May of 2022. She then began all of the interviews and working with gathering all of the data from the various sources with the continuum of care, as well as through the HUD systems, and putting together the need-based analysis. Upon that, we discovered that there was a need really for all four, or any four, of what was allowed under these funds. So when we put the NOFA out, when we put the request, the NOFA, the request for funding availability out, and invited participants to join in that, we were looking at any of the eligible uses. And the need was that supportive services were needed for the increase of incomes, affordable housing was needed, and then TBRA was most needed of the three. But we did put it out that we would accept all four. The process that we followed through the notification of funding availability is the typical process that we follow with federal funds, which is the notice, the training segments, then the application receipt, CDAC, which is our advisory committee that helps to inform and advise on the competitive process of the federal funds. They have a sub-grantee scoring committee. So CDAC takes the lead in reviewing the applications as the Community Development Advisory Committee. They take the lead in reviewing those. They did the necessary interviews. We don't always do interviews, but because these were special funds, they wanted additional interviews. So the interviews were conducted, and then the applications were scored. With these two, both being similar with the fact that they're offering supportive services. So it is supportive services, and then one of them is offering a TBRA, tenant-based rental assistance with it. That's ISK. Because these funds are specifically for homeless or at risk of homeless, both of these organizations really showed forth competitive applications because the population that they were working with was either homeless, currently homeless, in partnership with a homeless shelter, or at risk through one of the vulnerable populations that these dollars do advise. Did I miss one?
I think you got them all. Thank you for that. So as I read through the HUD plan, there's great information that is in there. One of my questions is, it lists, so everyone that is on this list are individuals that you spoke with or interviewed. Within them, I think there's about 15 organizations, but usually it says on there if you interviewed them and whatnot. So I'm wondering, out of all of the organizations that you interviewed, about how many applications did you have, do you think, that came through?
So we had less than 5 applications come through. Okay. Commissioner Hoffman did ask a question as far as, can I speak to a speculation? And I hate to, because it truly would just be, what I think could happen is there was additional overlays on requirements for these dollars, both with compliance and time that these had to remain long-term affordable if it was a housing project, as well as still having to comply with all of the additional federal requirements that typically raise the cost of a housing project. And then they had deep requirements for long-term, less than 30% affordability. And so I think with the timing and the quickness of having to disperse these funds, the complication of a housing project that required all of those federal requirements and supported that deep of a subsidy just could not be assembled in the time that HUD allowed.
Thank you. And you're talking about the time restraints, that's either the 10-year or the 15-year commitment when it comes to housing? Is that correct?
15.
15-year? Mm-hmm. Okay. Because I know for these specific funds, it says up to, you can go to the 4 years. So,
Commissioner Decker, do you have another question, or I noticed you were thinking there?
I was. So I don't know if there's anyone here that can speak to questions I have to the organization itself. Is there any representatives here from ISK or New Genesis still?
I don't believe there are any here from New Genesis, and we did not invite the program manager from ISK.
Okay.
But if
I
there
can try to answer some of your questions. I do happen to work at ISK and will be abstaining on this, but let me make a general statement here first, is that Although it was a little tight, it was an entirely open process. There was a lot of participation in your initial notice. I don't think it was a secret to the community. A lot of people showed up for that. It's a challenging application, but there certainly was an opportunity for people to apply. I don't know, particularly, I know you asked Commissioner Hoffman whether HRI had applied specifically. I'm not aware of those details, but one thing we watch constantly at ISK is any grant opportunities or funding opportunities that come along. Obviously, we are also in the supportive housing business. We get HUD funds for that. So I think we looked at this opportunity and put together an application for that competitive process. And I don't know if you have a particular question you want to ask me about that, Commissioner Decker.
Yeah, it was just, one or two questions regarding some of the benefits and the outcomes. And I read through ISK's application and reviewed that. And from my understanding, I know you guys work with a particular property management company to assist individuals.
No.
Was there something about Lukeman Group there?
We don't work particularly with, we provide rental assistance subsidies to individual property owners through our PSH program. We have 148 units of scattered site that we subsidize. So we also have relationships with a whole variety of landlords. Lukeman happens to be one of them.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. When I was looking through things, I think that was the only one that I saw. But as long as, that's an organization or the organizations, so I guess one of my questions would be, say we're helping an individual and some of the options that are open or will an individual have an option to choose where
Yes.
they can live? Perfect. And then
I want to make a couple qualifications around that. Whenever we're doing rental assistance, we're required to inspect units using HQS, the HUD Quality Housing Standards. So if it was a situation where someone desired to live somewhere, but the unit did not meet those minimum standards, not only, of course, would we not want to assist them with a rent there, but we wouldn't be allowed to do that until that unit was brought up to a certain minimum standard.
Awesome, very good. I understand we're going to have some, job trainings and whatnot. Do we have any jobs or do we have any employers that are on board with the internships and things like that? I'm just wondering what businesses and organizations have said that, hey, we're all about, taking in these individuals that have gone through this training. Has that been set yet, or?
No, we didn't find out whether we're going to get the grant or not until very recently, but I'll be more than happy to have the team come in and provide you a first quarter report or something like that as we get into it.
And I just wanted to clarify that for New Genesis, unfortunately, the representative is not here, but I believe the pastor spoke on this is specifically with KGM, who they're partnering with the training and the educational piece there, and also with the KGM. But I'm wondering, and again, some of these questions that I'm asking are also CDAT questions, so some individuals may have heard them before. I was just, again, reading through all the notes. So in order to take advantage of this great opportunity, from what I'm understanding, they have to go through KGM.
So that is a great question, and one that we asked as staff as well. So the partnership is with KGM, specifically because the funds really are targeting. So at least 70% of who is addressed will be that population. However, if there is somebody who is interested in getting the child care provider certification. There will be an access for them to be able to reach out and fill out the intake paperwork with New Genesis to get enrolled. So this is, as mentioned, these are supportive services in conjunction with obtaining, for New Genesis, in conjunction with obtaining the necessary child care license certification. And so with that, the supportive services that are being offered is childcare will be offered during times of education. They have partnerships within the programs for transportation and for meals. And then they have mentorships within the classrooms at their daycare, and they have mentors assigned to be able to do the on-the-job requirements for childcare and obtaining the certification. So those partnerships were built into their application, and but the opportunity would be available.
Point of information, would somebody mind just sharing with the public what KGM and ISK stand for? I just want to make sure people know what we're talking about when we use acronyms.
Thank you. Kalamazoo Gospel Mission.
Kalamazoo Gospel Ministries.
Ministries.
Thank you.
And ISK, Integrated Services of
Kalamazoo.
Kalamazoo. I can never remember if it's of or the. Yes, of Kalamazoo.
I just have one more quick question, Ms. Parsons. Is there a backup plan if all funding does not come through? So is this like a make or break? So if I don't get this funding, I don't know if you would know this, but you know, if these organizations don't get this funding, can they not do anything at all? I have another question to you. And then I also just want to clarify that if funding is not allocated by March 31st of this year, March 31st of this month, then it's all or nothing. Either we give all the funds back, or do we give the funds back that we just did not allocate? I just wanted some clarification on that.
Yeah, this is why I say it's unprecedented. We've, in my experience, and I worked with federal funds for many years, only a couple at the City of Kalamazoo, but my history runs back with federal funds for close to 20 years, and this is the only time that it is a full recapture. So the action plan needs to be approved and submitted to HUD by March 31st, or it is a full recapture. And then you asked another question in there.
Yes, if these organizations don't get some of this funding, what is their plan to move forward?
Yep. So one of the questions that we do ask within the application is if you don't receive funding or don't receive the full request of your funding, can the program move on? And both of the organizations did provide their plan, if not receiving full federal funding, which was basically you scale back your programming. And then with New Genesis, without these funds, they cannot do this program. It is a large amount of wraparound services that are going in as the population they're serving does not have any additional funds to put into the training. And so these funds specifically were to offer out to the community deeper subsidies.
Thank you, Ms. Parsons.
Other questions for the city team? Vice Mayor Cooney?
I have a comment.
Okay.
Is that okay, yeah. So I really appreciate these questions. They really were insightful, and I appreciate them. But it seems to me that this was a tough process. This was open. We need these services.
Yes, sir.
And I'm so glad that people are stepping up to provide them. And it was a community organization, CDAC, community people who approved this. We certainly don't want to send this money back. And I think this will do a lot of good, so I'm supportive of it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Cooney. Commissioner Hess.
Thank you. Again, agreed, Vice Mayor. we heard a few weeks ago at our committee of the whole of the need for more childcare in the community, especially from Grace Labana from YWCA. These trained people are then able to go out in the community and do the particular jobs of childcare. They'll be certified, they'll be able to provide more childcare in our community. Is that correct?
Yes. So I'm doing a nonverbal. I was waiting for my chance to speak. Yes, this certification will go with the individual. So it's not a specific certification just to do childcare here. They could go anywhere and obtain employment with this certification.
Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to kind of, piggyback what Commissioner Hess says. I also saw that within year 2, they will then start training for a medical assistance.
No. So that was in their original application, but that is not what these funds are for. These funds are specifically for their child care. That was a desire they had, but as New Genesis is a child care provider, they had all of the partnerships and capacity within their existing program. So they're not a medical care provider. And so that was just an idea that they had that they could possibly expand out the job training opportunities. But their capacity really resides in that child care certification. They are able to provide, as I mentioned, the mentoring and the classroom opportunities, as well as plugging participants into the opportunity for even some employment opportunities right there in their facility. And so the goal is, as Mackenzie mentioned, to have 40 successful certifications come through the program.
Well, I've taken a look at some of these resumes of the individuals that would be there, and individuals, I believe, just from looking at it on paper, they've got some great experience, especially when it comes to working with children, daycare, education, early learning. So I think their staff is going to be awesome. Like I said, just from looking at the applications that they had sent along with their application. So. Yeah, thank you so much for all of the informative information, Ms. Parsons. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Other questions, team? All right, so just a couple final comments here. Just one thing I want to do, this is obviously, it's a little awkward for all of us. Commissioner Pradel abstained from something this evening just because he's involved with an organization that might be included. A town the size of Kalamazoo, I think it does end up that sometimes multiple members of this commission might be involved with one organization or another in other ways, our work capacity outside of this. So we always have to be careful, be very transparent about that in our voting and in our comments. So just for a moment, I've already said it, I will be abstaining on this. I do work for Integrated Services of Kalamazoo, and this particular grant does not pay me to work there. I already, have that job, so it is not something that benefits me directly. Our department is a department that's focused on assisting our population that is tenuously housed or unhoused here in Kalamazoo. So I'm very, very lucky to work with a team there that's, very, very devoted to that. I do want to say that I really do appreciate, and thank you, Vice Mayor Cooney, for bringing it up, is that this work doesn't all happen up here. We have board after board after board here at the City of Kalamazoo. I would say our kind of unheard volunteers that make this whole system work at the end of the day. And one of those groups is the volunteers. It's rather, I don't know if the word thankless is exactly right, but it's unheralded work where hours and hours are put in. And I always want to honor and thank members of that Community Development Act Advisory Committee that's been around for a while and makes recommendations and tough decisions based on their community awareness for decades now. And so I really, really do appreciate that work, and I always do want to honor that's occurred and there's been an evaluation process there. Anything else from Commission? All right. Thank you, Ms. President.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the chambers who would like to comment on this item?
Thank you very much. I would just like to state one thing. In the application that is online with the city of Kalamazoo, that application says it is for a homeless population, for it to be brought, and it isn't clear. We heard tonight that they're saying that there will not be homeless population brought into New Genesis building. Instead, New Genesis staff is going to go to the gospel mission. Is that correct? And I hate that I'm taking up the time, because as you see, there are people in this community who live in the Cobb, Patterson, Woodward area who stayed, because they are concerned that they're not being listened to. The city commission asked us to do a neighborhood plan. The top priority says single family owner occupied housing. And it's to continue to keep our community safe and not be a dumping ground. Staff protect where our neighborhood has been gentrified, and now we're looking at here. So if it's clear that all of the services that's being provided by New Genesis is going to be provided at the gospel mission. Is that what I'm hearing? And my time is, will you stop my time, please, if you have to answer?
Here's what I'm going to ask. Is Director Mitchell here still? Just could you provide some clarification once again? I know you already spoke to this, but.
Am I on? Okay. So yes, to answer that question directly, all of the education services are taking place at Kalamazoo Gospel Ministries. Education, oh, you're right here. I was going to turn around to you. The education opportunities, the classroom opportunities, which any given cohort could have a maximum of 10 people in it. So we're not talking large volumes. But the education opportunity, the classroom experience, will happen at New Genesis. When the person goes through the process to where they have done the education and need to start getting that those practical hours, that will take place at New Genesis. Keep in mind that for childcare provision, there are many background checks that have to happen for individuals to work with this population of children. So education, Kalamazoo Gospel Mission, in classroom at New Ministries, in classroom will happen at New Genesis.
I'm sorry, but in the packet that this whole
Just because no one can hear you if you're not at the microphone.
I'm sorry, but the packet that this community, and we saw parts of it, NACD had to have an emergency meeting because the neighborhood, particularly the people that live all around there, were not told of any of this. And so I don't want to use up my time because there was residents who signed a petition. It doesn't have the correct address that states for
To Clerk Bourne.
However, it does, I just want to read this because in that application, it says that that religious organization could not discriminate against anyone. So if someone is a pedophile and they're there, are you saying that you throw that document out that is in the packet? Because that's what's in the packet. And it said that in order to be part of Home Funds, opera, it's in the packet. I really want to say something, please. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak this evening. I must first state that I'm not here to bash the homeless, New Genesis, Gospel Mission, or the city staff. However, I am here seeking equity, transparency, and justice for the neighborhood that I choose to pay taxes, volunteer, and work at. It's been over 10 years that the neighborhood has had to deal with the X-train, street parties, and absentee landlords. In spite of all that, the homeowners, Cobb Street, Patterson, Staples, Boxer, Lulu, Prouty, Woodward, Edwards, Crum, Burdick, they remained while others left this neighborhood. They deserve respect to know when other people are bringing people in this community that your downtown businesses just told you they didn't want there. The chief said he asked you for money to put a substation in downtown. The whole 10 years that our neighborhood was having to deal with these issues, no one talked about a substation in the area where the most vulnerable people were having to deal with it. The people who came to NACD, it's great that everyone's explaining all of this now, but it could have been avoided. So it says, this petition from the Northside residents requesting that the city of Kalamazoo postpone approving all homeless services at New Genesis located, it said 1340 Cobb because the residents know New Genesis as 1340 Cobb. So we apologize. Approving all the homeless services at New Genesis. The residents also want to see single-family owner-occupied only homes, not 30 homes of all variety in an area that the residents stay in spite of. And we pay the largest taxes around. The developers that have come in our neighborhood, they're getting tax incentives and everything else, and they're paying less than us. So I thank you. I'm not trying to be belligerent, but I think the residents who came here tonight deserve to let this commission know how they feel about the community that they have stayed. And I'm sorry, I lost my phone. I couldn't contact anyone. My last statement is I want to thank James Baker because he made sure the residents knew about that $12 million program. They brought them in over and over and over, came back. They didn't do after the fact and say, we want you to come and we'll talk to you after everything is settled. I want to thank Antonio and even Christina Anderson because she allowed Jay Slavy to keep coming back to the neighborhood and say, are we sure? Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm going to let the residents speak.
Okay, I appreciate you. So, I see some other people that would like to speak here. So this is a time for, obviously, Director Mitchell, you have?
Just for clarification, like Ms. Jordan spoke about, the initiative is workforce development to open up opportunities because we had the issues of that, and we wanted to make sure the funding assisted the population, working with the church and work with the gospel mission so that we gave opportunities to a population that didn't have opportunities before. The key is that because of the positions that are being trained for, there's a lot of background checking to clarify that individuals are not sex offenders and things like that will get this training to get this certification. So sorry for the miscommunication to the community of the location. As stated, New Genesis addresses that address, but because of that facility is not an operational condition, the old school, they are at the church, Stone Church facility and everything, but their address is still the Cobb Street address.
But the actual daycare facility is at Stone's Church?
Is at Stone's Church, correct.
Thank you, Director Mitchell. Yes, next please.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Dr. Margaret Hill Smith, and I am a resident of Kalamazoo. I'm here because after expressing hearing concerns about the Genesis Center, I thought I was suggested that I come here to speak to you tonight. I live directly across from the new Genesis Center, and I wanted to share some things with you quickly. I moved here in 2019, and in 2020, I made several efforts to contact Stone's Church authorities about serious concerns with that property.
Excuse me, could you push the microphone down? Everybody can hear you who's listening. Thank you.
My emails were unanswered. My letters were ignored. And it was not until I found someone I personally knew at the church that I was able to get any response at all. This total lack of concern to my direct efforts leads me to have less than positive regard for any information from Stone's in terms of property management. It is a fact that people who do not feel that they are valued generally do not value others. The destruction of a hotel that was utilized to assist people who were homeless is one example. The condition of an area near Riverview Avenue is another example. I've also been informed that the ministry with community has had a constant battle to keep the area clean around their ministry because of the habits of many of the people who are homeless. If in fact Stones is thinking of starting computer classes, I wish they would give that a second thought. The classes that this group of homelessness individuals needs is to focus on our skills to take care of property, to keep things clean, and properly disposing of trash and waste if they are planning to provide housing of any kind. Citizens who do not live in a community fail to appreciate or care about that community. A review of the Board of Directors of Stones reflects a disconnect between those individuals and our neighborhood. That may play a role in the disgraceful condition of that building that faces my home and the church's willingness to even suggest putting either inappropriate or inappropriate training in our community. I have brought a letter that I did share in 2020 with Stones just to provide with you with more information about what our concerns were. Right now, after the ice storm, they have trees, one of them laying in the road. No one has even been over there to look at that. So when they start talking, I can't trust at this point in time if Stones is really giving us accurate information. And everybody has a phone these days. So as far as certain training, if they're going to do specific training, bravo. But I'm wondering, because I've done plenty of grants with the federal government, and I'm not getting clear understanding, and it sounds like things are thrown together at the last minute with this one, and that's dangerous. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, please.
Excuse me, my name is Robert Lofton. I am a resident and a homeowner on the north side of Kalamazoo, Michigan. I am puzzled because I keep hearing the word units, and the units are not being described to be as a pod. They're being described to be as a home, and I'm confused. What are they trying to put on the north side of Kalamazoo? Are these pods that they're trying to put on the north side of Kalamazoo as individuals to live in? I am confused. I am not getting the information to be direct. What is coming? What kind of unit are you looking for? Housing unit? Or are you putting a unit there for someone to stay in? I am confused. I am not getting the information correct.
I'll let the next person speak, and then we'll go on and see if we can get staff up and answer more questions.
I'm Neil Isker. I live at 345 North Burdick Unit 303. And my girlfriend Cecilia, Sheila has applied for some of this money, and she deserves it. She's been homeless a long time. She has to try to survive in minimum living conditions. And I hope you will approve this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Pastor Alexander Player. I live at 1531 Cobb Avenue. I've lived there since 1980. It is my desire always and continually to see my neighborhood improve, get better, and for anything that is added to that community to be a positive addition and not something that can detract from the community and be an adverse effect to the community. That whole area is zoned single-family residence. We can sometimes turn that designation into something other than what most of the families in that area consider to be single-family residents. We kind of heard some talk about pods or whatever, 8x8s or whatever that designation was. But when a community is not informed, does not get accurate, current, up-to-date information, is not included in the discussion about what is happening, what might happen, and what will be happening to their community, they are concerned, sometimes upset, and you have all these residents that are largely residents of the Cobb area, the Westnedge, Patterson, Woodward, that square block of community. They're here because they don't want an addition into their community that is going to pull their community down, me included. My wife is here also. We don't want that. We want to see our community uplifted, built better, and become a cornerstone of this community, of this city. We want single-family housing in that area. There's enough, excuse me, there's enough space there to build several quality single-family homes that can build up that community, build up my community, build up this city. And in fact, that area is part.
Right. I agree, Mr. Pilar. Thank you. Yes, next, please.
Hi, my name is Bernice Watson. I live at 1421 Cobb Avenue. I first got wind of this on Friday evening at 8 o'clock. From Friday to today, I've heard 5 different versions of what's happening. First, it was pods, and it was training center. I was told this evening by a city official to my face that it was not going to be pods, that it was going to be a daycare center. So I'm totally confused as to what is, can we get it in writing, word, point blank, this is what's going in the building. And like everybody else, we pay taxes. I value my house. I love my house. I love my neighborhood. And to tell me that I'm going to come home now and there's training for homeless people, and you know, nothing against homeless people. Everybody has a right. But was any other neighborhood considered before you brought it to the north side? Was Oakland Drive, Winchell, Bronson Boulevard? Was any other neighborhood considered before you brought it to the north side? All these empty buildings downtown, you couldn't find no building downtown to put the training center in? You bring it in a neighborhood that is surrounded by elderly. I consider myself old. I'm not 15 or 20. I want to come home safe in the evening and not have to worry about traffic in and out as I'm coming and going. We've got kids walking down the street to go to North Glade. These are little kids. They walk to school. Most parents don't have the option to take off of work and make sure their kids get to school safe and get home in the afternoon. So when you're considering putting this training facility in that neighborhood, did you look at the neighborhood? Did anybody even ask the neighborhood or say, hey, we're about to do this, what do you think? Was any of that considered? Crickets?
So, more comments?
No, I'm just asking, was any of this considered?
So I think we'll have further explanation going on, trying to answer all these questions. Anyone else who would like to speak? Nehemiah, you already had your time at the microphone. Nehemiah, please. Nehemiah, this is not your chance. You had your chance to speak on this. Thank you. So, any other comments, questions? Thank you.
1831 Cobb. We have been residents there for close to 43 years. The neighborhood has changed. There's a lot of things going on in the neighborhood. And I don't know where the miscommunication is. Pastor Armstrong mentioned there's going to be a meeting at Stone's the 14th to talk about the housing for the old New Genesis. like everyone else here, we're concerned about what type of housing do you want to put there? It sounds like it's going to be a part of HUD housing. Am I right?
So,
Okay. Is it HUD housing they're thinking about when they tear the old New Genesis down to put there? Whatever they put there, whatever you think about, remember that that's our neighborhood, and we have children in our neighborhood. And we want to see new houses coming up in our neighborhood, but we don't want to see just anything thrown in there and we not know about what's going on. And it's a big concern. Thank you.
thank you very much, very clear. So, one thing I want, first of all, I want to say thank you to everyone that came down. Your concerns are heard, number one. Number two, I'm very familiar with Cobb Street. It's Cobb Street, and the residents live in Cobb Street. It's a beautiful area. It's a wonderful street. Honor and respect all the individuals who live there now, have lived there a long time, put their time, sweat, and effort into making sure that that is a safe neighborhood for people to live. Total respect for that. I recognize that. I believe we're in a situation right now where we are taking action on something, and there's a couple things that are being, kind of brought together on this particular item that's on our agenda that maybe shouldn't be in the same category. Now, I'm asking for staff to correct me on this if I'm wrong, so I'm just going to say what I understand what it is that the city had some money available and some organizations applied to use that money in a couple categories. 2 organizations are going to be awarded that if we act on this evening. One of those organizations is New Genesis. And as I understand it, the funding that we are approving tonight will basically provide a program that's going to look like this. People who are not currently housed, who will go through an appropriate background check to make sure they can indeed be certified to work in a daycare center, are going to have an opportunity to have educational training to prepare them for working in a daycare center. After successfully finishing that training, they will have an opportunity, I don't know if you want to call it an internship, but to work actually providing daycare services, once again, correct me if I'm wrong, in a daycare center which is in Stone's Church. I believe that is what we're talking about tonight. Am I wrong? Or am I right? Okay. So that's the funding that we're talking about. Let's talk about the housing side of it. There are no plans to put pods at the former North Christian School. 0. If there's somebody talking about that, I haven't heard anything about it. As soon as I started to hear about it, I made calls to the gospel mission, to other people I know. Anyone else can add to that. There's no plan for that. I understand that the owner of that site, New Genesis, Stone's Church, is interested in building single-family homes on that site. We're not approving any money for that tonight. That's not on the program. That's not on the agenda. I also understand from Pastor Armstrong that the church intends to have some open sessions with the neighborhood to talk about the design, the intent, what you're thinking about getting neighborhood input. That is what I understand. That is scheduled to go forward. Nothing that we're voting on tonight has anything to do with that plan. Now, if you're concerned also about the maintenance of that current building, well, that's been heard, right? And I know that can be challenging. I've also lived adjacent to buildings that were not occupied and had great frustrations with that myself, so I understand that. But on the agenda for this evening is no plan, no intent, no housing, nothing for the North Christian site. Classes at KGM, the internship, the work in a daycare facility at Stone's Church, with the idea over 3 years, training 40 people. That's the goal. So that is, over the 3 years, that's 13 1/3 people a year. So that's the intensity of that training program that will be incorporated, and hopefully, people who go through that will then achieve employment, work at other daycare facilities, increase daycare options, and gain themselves an income so that our hope, obviously, I'm sure, from New Genesis, but I know from all of those up here, be able to permanently house themselves now with a job that they are certified to do. So, hey, I get the concern, and I get the mistrust. I get it. You know, we hear a lot of things. We feel like sometimes, are they telling me the truth or not? What's the real story? But this, I just want to tell you, and I believe this is the understanding of everybody up here, what I am describing is what we are voting on this evening. And if there's some point, who knows what, some city dollars going through some other kind of housing development, that's going to have gone through a process, and there will certainly be options for the community, for people who want to come to this meeting, to talk about that. There has been no request to the city for funding some kind of housing project. This is in its, you know, I would say, pre-birth kind of status right now. It is an idea. It is under discussion. I hope that helps. I hope that provides some comfort. And I can tell you, and I know everyone up here feels this way, nobody sitting up here wants to do something that's going to hurt the residents of Cobb, the residents on adjacent streets, Woodward, Patterson, you name it. Don't want to do that. And that I can commit to be the case. So once we have this opportunity for other discussion here, and let's make sure we get all that out. Remind me of the date here. Is it the initial conversation, Pastor Armstrong? March 14th at 7 p.m. at Stone's Church. So I'm sure some of us will also from up here show up at that. Did you want to say something, Commissioner Hoffman?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say, I think what I heard on Friday and today is that community needs to be able to communicate with the church and with city staff and with us as commissioners as to what's happening in their neighborhood. So I just want to personally acknowledge you all that I heard you Friday and I hear you now. I think sometimes we are making decisions without getting that community engagement going. And I think this is one of those cases. And so I apologize to the residents of the North Side that there was not more transparency and communication with you all as we venture into doing this work. So I just wanted to acknowledge you all with that and say that communication is key.
Thank you. I agree, Commissioner Hoffman. Thank you. So we're still on this topic. If there's someone who hasn't spoken yet, sorry about that. I will give you, 3 minutes at this time, but is there someone who's in that situation who'd like to take advantage of? Mr. Parker, please come forward, sir.
Thanks for the clarification. I really appreciate it because I was really out in left field. To help me, you clarified that nothing with housing can be tonight. I appreciate that. I have one thing to say. Can we have it in writing?
I'm sorry. All right. Anyone else that wanted to comment on this item then?
I just wonder if
Commissioner.
Antonio, I know you've been listening to the conversation, and I don't know if you have any more clarity to provide.
Mic on? Okay, there you go. Thank you. Thank you for the residents. I hate not facing the residents and speaking about this topic. The issue we're trying to make sure in this communication and working with the community is, as stated, we're working with 3 mega churches in our community to utilize their property to create pretty much housing opportunities in the community on the north side that hasn't been opened up in a while. In the case of the housing side, sorry for the miscommunication on New Genesis address is the Cobb Street address. That building is not operational. It cannot be used. It needs to be torn down, removed from that site. It's not operational. It would cost too much money. Stone Church is right now doing the research. Like the mayor said, and thank you for the explanation and clarification, which is very good, is that that building needs to be removed. We're working with them to look into that process. We're trying to work with each one of the mega churches on the north side to, one, get everything in order before they start talking to the community, so that it's clear communication on what their initiative is. This meeting on March 14th is that first meeting of many, similar to what we did with Mount Zion, assisting them with their community engagement. Similar, we'll be working with Galilee to have their discussion on their project that they're trying to bring also, which is still being worked out, those details. So we're going to try to be as open as possible, working with the community. But as stated by the mayor, there's no funding committed from the city for this project at this time. We will hopefully try to bring some dollars to this project once we have a better idea what that project is. But it is a single-family housing development initiative. Owner-occupied senior family housing initiative. That is what Stone Churches wants to bring to the community. They and the other mega churches want to invest into their properties to provide opportunities for residents on the north side, and they're asking the city to assist them in that process.
Not 30 of them squeezed into that spot.
No, it's all right. It's all right. So what Ms. Jordan is talking about is what will be the look, what will be the initiative of the housing. That's what I'm going to say New Genesis, but that's what Stone Church wants to get feedback from the community. They want to maximize the space, but they do not want to, like you say, just put up anything. And so they're going to be reaching out to the community to get additional feedback on the development of that location. We hopefully will be able to work with them to identify not only, quote unquote, what that opportunity is, but also what that cost will be and how we as a city can assist with that process. This is a private development. This is not a city development. This is a private development similar to Mount Zion. Similar will be with Galilee as well. This is not a HUD project. This is a private development project that will be assisted by the city, hopefully through our brownfield plan, through other aspects, once we figure out what the need is for this development. We do not know. This is in the infancy stage. This is only in discussion. We're just doing clarification on what is needed to hopefully take the building down, which will not be a cheap effort at all. So hopefully that was helpful.
Thank you, Director Mitchell. Commissioner Morales?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a clarification and give you guys some information about like the programming with the training, right? Make sure you spread that word to those individuals maybe that are living with you or that could possibly take advantage of that training. I'm pretty sure it's for people who are homeless. So I've had people live with me, like my nephews or like my aunt one time lived with me. She would qualify for something like that. Okay, if I'm correct, right? If it's people like that are living with you that are like technically homeless, would qualify for that training. Okay, so it's not specifically like, oh, that we just want to put people who live at the gospel mission, right, and put them in that training. No, it's for anybody who is considered homeless, right? And that might be an aunt or uncle, a niece who's living with you, right? So make sure you spread that information because that's available to every individual that is considered homeless, right? So I think that's a really important piece.
Thank you, Commissioner Juarez. Any other comments from the chambers on this item? So once, okay.
Hello, my name is Orlando Little. I reside at 527 William Street here in Kalamazoo, on the north side of Kalamazoo. As I've been reviewing this, just like everybody else, hearing a lot of misinformation over the last week or so pertaining to the New Genesis building on Cobb Street and what the residents expect and what they want to talk about and who they want to communicate to about that. One of the biggest concerns I've had personally is every time I hear talk about the north side and what the development and what we're going to do, we're always looking towards the religious leaders and the big three churches, Stone, Galilee, and Mount Zion, and that's fine. These are great pillars of the community, but we want to be clear with the city and with the religious community that they're not the only ones that speak for our community. We want it to be known that a lot of the people that are the leads and heads of these organizations, religious organizations, they don't live on the north side, so they don't speak for us. We just want a level playing field. We want clear communication. We want transparency, and we want it to come from the people in the community that don't wear the hats. We want it to come from the people that's, paying their taxes, or they may need a little help, or they want to see beautification projects going on. But they would, more importantly, they want input, and we're tired of people looking to the religious communities to answer questions for what the community wants. So nothing bad bashing them, nothing saying nothing bad. Like I said, these are three great pillars of the community, but there are more residents that actually live there, and that's the people we want to bring to the table and talk about. That's all I have.
Okay, amen, thank you.
To what you said, Commissioner Juarez, is there any documentation anywhere as to what the qualifications are? We're talking about it, but we've not seen it in writing. So again, when we leave here, if we don't have a document which says this is who qualifies, this is where you go, we're going to be back here again because, again, it's going to be miscommunication. So with that, I would like to see that documented somewhere, so whether it's on your website, but we also need to know where it is. Where do we go to look for it at? Where can we go so that we can print this information out, to get it posted, to share it on our website, and those kind of things? Because until this meeting, I did not know, had not known, so please think about that. A question was asked of me to ask while I was up here, is after all of this discussion, are you still planning to vote tonight, not on the housing, but on this training program?
It's still on our agenda. We haven't pulled it from our agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Question.
Commissioner Hess.
So Cheryl, perhaps you can answer this, or Antonio, I'm not sure. So where would that reside? Should this go through and should we receive the funding, do we have an idea of where the information would be and how it can be communicated?
So within the copy of the draft allocation plan that was presented tonight on page 17, it does talk to the City of Kalamazoo intends to give preference for home art funded activities to homeless individuals and families as defined as 24 CFR 91.5. This includes individuals or families who lack a fixed, regular, or adequate nighttime residence. Preference will not be given to specific subpopulations. So it is in the draft allocation that's presented to you tonight.
I think when it comes to actually publication about the program itself and the opportunities to participate, that will not be coming from the city. That will be coming from the subcontractor that will be actually operating the program.
Information how to access it?
Yes.
Yes, that will come through New Genesis, or what we would call, if approved, the subrecipient.
Yes. Other questions? Commissioner Decker.
I don't have a question, but I did want to answer a question that was asked as I'm reading on page 17 of the plan. And it does state specifically affordable rental housing production goal. If you're looking for something in writing, it's saying, and we're specifically talking about the home ARP funds. The city of Kalamazoo does not intend to use home ARP funds to create or support affordable rental housing. And I think that goes to show with all of the funding mainly going to services, helping individuals stay in a home where they're at, like the vouchers and the rental assistance through ISK. So that's page 17, again, of the plan, where it does state that these home ARP funds that we are talking about today, the 1.8+ million, will not be used for developing houses. So I'm not exactly sure, again, who in our audience today asked that question, but I just wanted to make sure you know that it is within the packet there.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Any other questions for the city team at this point?
Sure.
Director Mitchell.
We can work with the approved provider to share the information once they post the information with city staff to put on our website and share on Facebook as well. So we can share the information once the information is put together by the provider. So we can work with them to share that information on our website and also on Facebook and social media as well, just to assist with this process.
Thank you, Director Mitchell.
And
Other
would-
questions?
Right, and would that also go through Gospel Ministries? They would put it out in their
Yes,
network?
they would also share with their network, yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So commissioners, here's where the business meeting rolls on. Commissioners, the recommended action is a motion to approve the allocation plan for the city's home investment partnership program, American Rescue Plan funds, including the budget recommended by the Community Development Act Advisory Committee. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Hess.
Support.
Supported by Vice Mayor Cooney. Discussion, commissioners.
Yeah, I think even with something like this, you know, in the time frame that we had and the partnerships we have, it seems to me that part of our end and what we can control as commissioners and as the city is to communicate and to over-communicate, right, as we see, because there was some misinformation that was given about what was taking place, right? And I think for us, we have to make sure to do our due diligence in those times where we can't give any kind of leverage to suspicion about what we're doing. Our community deserves to know. The residents of our community deserve to know what's happening in our, you know, with you know, this amount of money that's going to certain, you know, programs in clarity. You know, I'm so glad we got to a point of clarity, because now we can move forward, and now people who have the right information can take advantage of these opportunities, right? And so I think for us, if just for me, if we could just over communicate, and if it's overdoing it and overkill, so what? You know, at least we did our due diligence to do that, because we care about our residents so much. We want them to over know, right? We want them to understand that, like, okay, this is our job to make sure you understand what's happening. And so, that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Juarez. Other discussion? Commissioner Hess?
Absolutely. I do want to thank all of you who came out and spoke so passionately about your care for your neighborhood and what you want to see on the north side. I would remind the city and remind us to remember that this word communication literally means to make common. Let us make it common through our words, through our actions, through our showing up, through being there with and being there for each other. And you all have shown that today, and you have communicated well to us. So thank you. And then community, I'll say it again, to have charge of together, it's a verb. You have shown up today as community. You have done your work, and we have heard you. And I hope that we have made clear to you the intentions in what it is we're about to vote on, because I believe it's a good thing. Thank you.
Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to echo exactly what my previous two commissioners did, Commissioner Juarez and Commissioner Hess. For me, that drives home, especially being at the meeting on Friday. And, you know, last minute meeting, I came out because I wanted to hear what the community was saying, what you guys were saying about specific things happening in your neighborhood. And again, there was a lot of misinformation that was handed down before that meeting. I also think that this reaffirms what Commissioner Prado and I have been working on, and what some of our other commissioners have been able to do with us, is the meetings with commissioners at neighborhood association meetings. So I believe you got Commissioner Hoffman and Commissioner Cooney, was it? Had done one. And we need to do those more. So I'm going to check my calendar and move some things around. I'm hoping to be at the March 14th meeting to kind of hear some information. But I think, again, Commissioner Prado, you and I, just making sure that, you know, we've got a great team that's working on things right now. We're kind of tasking them with a few things. But I think, you know, them sitting in this meeting and hearing the importance of the communication, we really want to make sure we can work on that and get something brought to the commission for approval of how we're thinking of setting up these meetings to make sure that we are over communicating and making it common within our residents.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Prado.
I appreciate those comments, Commissioner Decker, because have you ever heard anybody, it's very rare in the work that we do where you hear somebody say, boy, there was some serious over-communication here on this one, right? You know, it's one of those things, it's like once misinformation, it's like toothpaste out of a tube. You can't squeeze it back in, right? And it's something that I know that this group up here is really committed to. You know, Miss Maddie, I heard you talk about Director Baker and specifically about how Director Mitchell and Deputy Director Christina Anderson, how, you know, they've really stepped up their game in terms of communicating and over-communicating. And Jay Slabby, yeah. And you know, those are really good examples and aspiration. I think there's always opportunity to learn from these instances. I want to thank everybody as well for coming out tonight because, you know, we sign up to be here till almost 10 o'clock at night for these sort of things. City staff signs up to be a part of this, but, you know, I know you all have busy lives and have lots to do, and to show up and show this level of care and just making sure we get it right is a powerful thing. And so thank you for that, for everyone for being here tonight. So thank you.
Other discussion, commissioners? Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Prado.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
I abstain.
Commissioner Decker.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner Juarez.
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners. The item is approved. Next on the agenda is item H4, City Manager Ritzma.
Authorize the release of the draft program year 2023 HUD action plan for a 30-day public comment period.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Is there a staff report on this item?
No, there isn't, Your Honor, but we have staff available if there are any questions.
All right. Commissioners, you have any questions for anyone on the city team? Okay, seeing none. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this item? Seeing no one, commissioners, the recommended action is a motion to authorize the release of the draft program year 2023 action plan for a 30-day public comment period. I'm going to emphasize that. Public comment period. Please make sure that you tell your friends and neighbors. This is a draft plan going into the HUD year, which starts in July. Is that correct? All right. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Hoffman,
Support?
supported by Commissioner Hess. Any discussion, commissioners?
I'll just comment and say, I know that was a labor of love by the folks who put it together. So I appreciate you, I appreciate the staff, everyone working to put that report together. It is, it's astounding. Thank you.
Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to agree with you, Commissioner Hess. I mean, you saw me in my stack of papers. I guess I printed it out because I needed to read it. But it's really an eye-opening when you look at, when it talks about the gap analysis between, you know, our current inventory for homes, the houseless population that we have counted through COC, and also doing the PIT count that we participated in. And it's, when you're really looking at, you know, a gentleman had talked about all the reports that we pay for and that we do and that we put together, and then nothing comes of those. You know, I feel like things are coming of this report, and they will come of this report because it really sheds a light onto some of the composition of what's happening within our city and the life of our city. So I'm excited to see and hear the feedback from the public once they're actually able to read this and go through it and digest it. And again, once they read that, and with the commission and with our team and with just our organizations that we work with, you know, we're going to be able to tackle a lot of these. And I just want to make sure that the comment that the gentleman said, that once we do reports, they sit on a shelf. I don't believe we're going to do that this report, and I think we're going to look at it as we start to figure out how we're going to be spending, you know, some more of our ARPA funds that we have available in the next few years.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Any other discussion? All right, one thing I guess I just want to say here is that HUD funding is very prescriptive. There are very particular rules, and if you don't want to keep getting HUD funding, then don't respond in a timely manner and don't follow the HUD rules. That will make it a lot easier. You won't have to go through all that. This is one of the things that we must do to continue receiving the ongoing HUD funding that we get, which is CDBG dollars and home dollars outside of ARPA. So I appreciate that. It's detailed, particular work, and it requires attention to detail. So thank you, city team, for keeping doing this, doing what we have to do, bring this draft plan forward. Clerk Bowling, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Decker.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner Juarez.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
I'll be abstaining because of my employer again on this item 4.
Thank you, Commissioners. The item is approved. Next on the agenda is item H5. City Manager Ritzma.
Acceptance of a lead hazard reduction grant in the amount of $3,971,441.40 and a Healthy Homes grant in the amount of $696,000 from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Office of Lead Hazard Control in Healthy Homes. And we have staff available here too, if there are any questions.
Getting in front of my question there, aren't you? All right, other questions from Commission for sitting on the city team?
Wait, is this good news?
Oh, yeah.
Great news.
This is really good
Yeah, we'll
news.
accept that money.
This is
Yeah.
really good news. I would like to hear perhaps, is it Ms. Parsons again? You're dominating our agenda tonight. Can you just quickly run down a list of how many homes and how those dollars might be disseminated?
Yes, thank you. I would actually like to invite Rachel Westcomb up. She is the compliance specialist that is overseeing our lead-based paint grant and Healthy Homes, which includes radon mitigation and air quality control. Put some faces to the names. Rachel.
Hi, Rachel. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, I first want to say I'm very excited about this new grant. We've been working on our 2018 grant, and we are expected to do 126 homes in that. So not only doing the lead remediation in those 126 homes that we are projected, but also doing the air quality. So only pest control, radon mitigation, or whatever kind of air quality that are needed in homes that helps with asthma or allergens. Radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer in the U.S. So we're very excited for this new grant.
That's great.
Thank you very much. Questions for the city team?
Who will be doing the remediations?
KNHS is our subrecipient, and then they will set out a contract to local contractors that have the certifications to do the lead. You have to have a lead certification for supervisor, worker, and it'll go out and for a bid process, and then the lowest bidder for that will be chosen.
Commissioner Decker.
No, I just wanted to say, that's awesome. So that is 126 more homes?
More homes.
More homes. And so it's not just the funding that we've already gotten before. This is more homes and more families and lives that we're going to be able to impact.
Correct.
I do have a couple questions, though. Actually, I do. Can you run through the process of how, and I'm going to make this quick because I know it's late, but I just want to know. So what is the process for you to pick a home to go into? Is it a home that someone has called you in? Is it a home that you know could possibly have lead? Is it a home that is just sold? How do you know what home you're going to go to?
So there is a qualification process for it. It can be an owner-occupied, it can be a rental. It has to be built before 1978 because that is when we stopped using lead-based paint in homes. Currently, with the regulation with HUD, it does have to have a child that is under the age of 6 or a pregnant woman, because that is the time that you absorb the lead most into your body. That is when you're the most at risk for that. There's also income qualifications for that. So if you're 80% AMI, so if you're underneath that, that's when we have that small area for that qualifications.
One last question. How many homes right now do you have in the queue that are waiting on funding to get remediated?
Right now we have a list that we still have funding in our old grant. So if somebody needs to get in that grant, they can absolutely apply. I do have business cards for KNHS.
Awesome.
You can call them and start that process.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Any questions on this paper? So I just want to remind all of us again, we talked about CDAC for a little bit here tonight, that much of the good work that happens in the city of Kalamazoo is not necessarily done by the city of Kalamazoo. We do this in partnership. Correct. So KNHS has been a critical, foundational partner in this lead remediation work when it comes to the paint side of things. Yes, the city is doing our direct work when it comes to lead service lines, but when it comes to actually working in residences, and I would suggest that some very large percentage of the houses in the city of Kalamazoo were built before 1978, as with many older build-out communities. So receiving these resources and having that partnership is what helps this good work to get done. So I appreciate that very, very much. So, are there any comments that people would like to make on this item from someone people who are here in the chambers? Seeing none, Commissioners, the recommended action is a motion to accept the grants. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Chris Pradel,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Decker. Any discussion, Commissioners? Commissioner Pradel.
I know we talked about how big of a deal this is, but this is a really big deal. I mean, I can remember however long ago it was when, we had a $1.9 million grant, and that was just huge. It was like, top story in the news and everything, like for a couple of days or whatever. And this is over twice that amount. And the other thing too is that when we talk about lead remediation, this is expensive work. I mean, this is work that's out of reach for most like moderate to upper income families. And when we had a presentation at one of our COW meetings not long ago,
Committee of the Whole.
At the Committee of the Whole meetings, thank you. A former commissioner, Matt Milzarek, was presenting, and he was talking about, we asked what the average amount is per household, and he was just estimating about $36,000 per household to have that done. The city's been making significant work very aggressively ahead of schedule and lead service line replacement, which is vital, absolutely important, and I'm incredibly proud of that work. But there are, hundreds, if not thousands, of young people who are living in old homes in our community that have lead and have that exposure potentially. And so this is incredibly critical work to do. And the thing that's particularly makes this most pressing to me is that, we've come off of the last 3 years, we're about 3 years into the pandemic. And, for a year and some change or more, for a lot of young people, while they were learning from home or weren't, leaving the house as much, they had more prolonged exposure to that lead. Not to mention that a lot of young people under 6 weren't going to doctor's appointments for a period. So during the period of their young growth, when they would have been tested for lead, were maybe not being tested as frequently or during that period as well. So this is just critically important for our community. I'm really excited that we're able to do this level of work. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Prano. Any other discussion? Clerk Boylan, please call the roll.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Decker.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner Juarez.
Yes.
Commissioner Prado.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The item is approved. Next are reports and legislation. Manager Ritzman.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to ask 2 individuals to come forward, our Public Safety Chief, Boyson, and our Public Services Director, Baker. They don't know I'm doing this, so it's kind of a surprise. Actually, I want to recognize them and the great work their departments performed, actually about a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago, during the ice storm. And as you recall, we received over a ½ inch of ice on Wednesday, the 22nd through Friday, the 24th, a lot of damage throughout the city. We actually activated our Emergency Operations Center, which is under Public Safety, and our new Emergency Preparedness Resource Manager, which we funded in last year's budget, led that effort. We had over 8 staff working in that EOC steady throughout that time, including public safety, public services, and city management team. And then we were able to stay in communications with other jurisdictions as well as the county. Public safety had over 1,300 calls for service during that 48-hour response time, with 70 public safety officers and equipment operators on staff. That's 15 extra called in on days off to work the storm. Public services had over 40 individuals working between public works and utilities, 24-hour around-the-clock coverage, over 100 calls for downed trees. I want to especially thank the city of Grand Rapids that sent 7 full-time employees plus some equipment to help us out. Very much appreciated. They were here through that Sunday, which would be the 26th. We had 6 dump trucks working around the clock, 2 forestry trucks, 900 dump truck loads of downed tree debris hauled away. And we do have a public drop-off site for brush at 322 East Stockbridge that's getting heavy use, and I believe that's still available for the public. And so just incredible work pulling together as a team to help our community through a really difficult situation. And I know we've had storms before, but this one seemed to really, strike a blow to all of our community. We are currently picking up debris throughout the city, Public Services is, and we'll be out to residents that have put out their brush debris out to the curb in the next several days. So besides Grand Rapids, I want to thank Consumers Energy too. They loaned us a generator. And on the public services side too, James, I think it's also important to know how important our water and sewer services were, and the ability, or I guess the potential for disruption there, given how our system's set up with lift stations and water pump stations that run on electricity. And when they did not have water or electricity, generators were brought in, and our staff had to manually go to each of those sites and monitor them and make sure generators were working. We never once missed a beat on distribution or wastewater treatment. So again, just incredible work by both of your departments. Thank your staff on behalf of us, myself, and I'm sure the City Commission is appreciative as well. Thanks.
No gift cards to Starbucks or anything like that?
We'll see. We did, during that time too, I forgot to mention, we did issue a emergency order. The mayor was able to sign that before he left for Florida for the weekend. He came back. And with that, there's potential for reimbursement funding from the state. And we're still waiting to hear back on that, but that opened the door for that opportunity as well. So I think last I saw, our total costs were about $500,000 in cost and storm cleanup, and continuing, as we continue the cleanup. So that's all I have this evening, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Manager Smith. I do want to just follow up on that. Maybe we do something a little more formal. I did text Rosalind Bliss, who's the mayor of Grand Rapids, and thanked her very much, but a text is not a very formal means of communication. So maybe we should put together some sort of thank you letter and send it up there on letterhead. Really
Absolutely.
Appreciate that. Yeah. Now is an opportunity for comments from commissioners. Any commissioners that want to make comments this evening? Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. Mine is just going to be real quick. I want to thank our team that was here and answering all of our questions, especially not ours, but also the communities and the residents, as it pertains to the new Genesis and the ISK home art monies. I also want to thank Director Baker and Chief Boyson for their work. I saw just the other day when we had a lot of snow coming down, KDPS was already out there. They're blocking off streets as you see cars sliding down. I ran into some public services that were doing the ice inside or putting salt down. They were at a gas station, so I ran into them. So they were out and about making sure the streets were safe. Yeah. That's about it. I think we had great conversation today, and I think we should always have great conversation about things that are happening in the city and that residents have concern about. And again, it goes to reiterate with Commissioner Prado that it's all about getting those calendars together. We've done a good job, and I think again this just reiterates for us the importance of, making sure that's something that continues with this commission and also continues going forward, because we can see that the community benefits from it and they want it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yeah, I'm not going to be long. I just want to express my admiration for the community, for their love of their community and their love of each other, and for coming down here. This is what democracy looks like. It's painful sometimes, but it is necessary and it is wonderful. And I just want to say that I don't think there's a gap. I think there is a coincidence between what people in the neighborhood want and what the people up here want and what our staff in this city wants. And I hope we can find a way to work more closely together. I want to thank the staff for the excellent work they did tonight. That was just great. And I want to thank the mayor for doing such a good job in clarifying everything that was out there. That was very confusing, and it could have gotten really more confused, but you really put it together in a great way. So thank you for doing it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Hess.
Yes, thank you. First of all, the proclamations that we gave this evening, earlier this evening, with March as Climate Emergency Month, I would encourage all of us to be aware of that and to go to climateemergencymonth.org and look at all of the possibilities of ways that we can participate in that and really look at ourselves. But that the proclamation for Bell's really wasn't separate, because Bell's is one of the more sustainable companies in the city. When we have our styrofoam collection, they've collected all of their styrofoam. They're one of the biggest contributors to all of that. So they live and they walk their walk and they talk their talk with sustainability. So I want to thank both of them. Second of all, tonight we voted on the consent agenda for Shop with a Senior. And I want to really thank the commission for supporting that with our dollars that we've been given in our budget. We've increased the amount a few thousand so that we can maintain the level of service that we did last year, the city. And I want to thank particularly LaTanya Turner, our community collaborator, who really went over and above in planning and executing that event last December. All the CPOs, the community policing officers, and Milestone Senior Services, and Community Homeworks. Commissioner Pradel came and spoke with the seniors during that luncheon and talked about what was available through Community Homeworks. Milestone talked about what was available through Milestone for home repair and home maintenance. So they got a lot of engaging and enthusiastic response from the city, and it was fun. And it was fun, and it's in the holiday time when it's really food is important, and we were able to provide 55 of our seniors with a shopping trip and on the city, and so I have a grateful heart for that, and it's going to happen next year. We'll keep it at 100 or at 55 people, but because of the cost of food, we've increased, with your blessing, the amount to $150 per person for that shopping trip. So thank you for that. Lastly, I have heard the folks from Isaac and all those coming forward to challenge us to do the work with race, to do the work with DEI, and I want you to know that we are doing that. I want to thank Tanya Hewitt-Smith and Lal Tlungi from our DEI office for putting together it was the CEO benchmark best practices for DEI last Thursday. Many of us attended that. And they brought in Darlene King, who is the executive director of the Michigan Diversity Council. And she was wonderful and led an amazing training for us with diversity as a fact, equity is a choice, and inclusion is an action. And like I said, with community is a verb, but so is inclusion. So we're working on that. Our subcommittee of myself, Commissioner Decker, and Commissioner Hoffman are working with Tanya and Attorney Robinson and so on to really get through and work through what it is we're looking for as an outcome. And we're definitely continuing that work of the MDHI report that came to us last year. So just so you know, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Commissioner Pradel?
Thank you, Mayor. Wanted to give everybody a pat on the back for, or I hope you give yourself a pat on the back to everyone who came out tonight and hung out here with us late tonight. It's really great to see so many people who are here tonight and sharing what's on your heart and mind. I know I feel personally pretty fired up when I see that many people show up because it means our community is alive and well in terms of caring about the issues that matter to you, so thank you for that. City Manager Ritzma, you recognized Director Baker and Chief Boysen, but just to put that in perspective, like a record 48 hours of calls, if you took that number of calls in 2 days and equated that to a full year, that'd be 250,000 calls that they would have. I mean, that's a level of volume that they had in just perspective. A little birdie told me that Director Baker was working like 16, 20-hour days, and I know for a fact I saw him out driving through communities, and when I kind of joked with him about it, that I saw him out and about, he's like, this is what I do. He's like, I drive through every single neighborhood to make sure that I can see with my own eyes what's going on. You know, that's leadership from the front. I'm proud that we have people who work for us who have that level of care and take that level of responsibility for every single neighborhood in this community. Also, wanted to just take a plug. I promised Deputy Community Planning and Economic Development Director Christina Anderson that the Planning Commission is looking for new planning commissioners. There's 23 boards and commissions that we have as a city, bless you. The Planning Commission's involved with rezoning, ordinance, text amendments, neighborhood plans. It's a vitally important feeder basically to the things that will come to the commission. And there's open applications right now for people who want to be on that planning commission. Saki Vyas just stepped down because she was term limited. Was a great planning commissioner. Would really encourage people from the public to take a look at that and consider serving on the planning commission. And then also, it's no secret as well, it's 2023. Commission elections are coming up in November. I'm hoping to make my decision here in the next couple commission meetings about my plans for this year. I think that's a fair thing to do for people so they can make their plans. But I just encourage people to start thinking about that as well, because it's vitally important that the community has options to choose from and strong candidates that run for commission. So thanks, that's it, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Prado. Commissioner Juarez? No? Okay. Commissioner Hoffman already told me no, right? So we got that set, correct?
Dave Boysen said I gotta give my time up because he said he wants to go home. He's crying about his bedtime. He's crying about his bedtime right now.
You're too kind. I want to talk about an event that I went to yesterday, and I'm sorry to say that I do not believe I knew this person, but it was a gathering of family and friends following a memorial mass for Evangelina Alvarez, who was born December 24th, 1992. A very young person who unfortunately passed away very suddenly, way too young. And I had the honor of getting to be part of some of the recognition that occurred as family and friends spoke a bit about her and what she did in her life. And I just want to say a little bit about her just for us to remember that. She's a proud daughter of Mexican immigrant parents who fed America as migrant farm workers, picking apples and cherries along with their 7 children, including her. She earned a bachelor's degree and then her master's in public administration from Western Michigan University. She was a passionate and committed community advocate for immigrants and farm workers on the local, state, and national levels. She worked at Farm Worker Legal Services as an outreach advocate and the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center as a public policy coordinator. She sat on various boards, coalitions, and committees with the singular goal of advancing more equitable conditions and policies for communities in need. Eva was a founding and influential member of Ellis, I believe I'm saying that right, which was the first Latina leadership program in Southwest Michigan. She was also recently a contributing writer to the book Latina Leadership Lessons that was just released this year. A person like that will be impossible to immediately replace, and I know she's left a big, big hole in the hearts of many, not only in her family, but in our community who worked with her. So I just want to take this moment just to recognize that and remember her as we go forward. I love you, Kalamazoo. We are adjourned.